Mark and Sean and Curtis have been busy working on a presentation to help us to prepare for the 2020, the 23-24 budget that's coming up. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the governmental funds. So this will be not not like the sewer and the revenue generating funds that we have, but this will just be those governmental funds that we're going to talk about. Mark's worked on this for a long time, and he's really put a lot of effort into this, and I hope it's something that'll be very helpful for us. I know we reviewed it the other day, Sean and Mark and I, and it sure helped me understand kind of where we're at and where our needs are and all of that kind of thing. So without any further ado, Mark, are you ready to get started?
Yep.
All right, we'll turn the time over to you then.
Okay. So yeah, today is all about a discussion so that the council's aware of the budgeting process and what we're kind of seeing on the horizon and what's happening. We've heard a lot of requests for a 5-year plan, trying to get our capital projects and our personnel kind of forecasted for 5 years so that so we know where we're at, where we stand. So today, as the mayor said, these are the governmental funds. If you look at your sheet, you'll notice that the revenue generating funds like the like water, sewer, storm drain, and wastewater are not part of it because their funding sources come from utility fees mainly, and so we separated those two out so that we could talk about the general governmental funds, which is all of the revenues that come from that are in green on your sheet here. Property tax, sales tax, other taxes, licenses and permits, then the senior center revenue that they get, other intergovernmental revenue, like some road funds that come in, and some other income. So that's what we'll talk about today. I just want to do a brief review of the current fiscal year, the fiscal year we're living in today, fiscal year 2023. Some of the things that we've instituted this year that have helped us to generate more revenue or to add more programs without a fiscal cost on the residents. We impacted transportation impact fee, which brings in about $65,000 a year. Corridor preservation funds, we've secured 3 different corridors with the corridor preservation funds. Now we're working with the landowners to purchase those right-of-ways, but the funding comes from the county. And then we upgraded all of our street lights. It not only looks better, but it also saves us about $25,000 a year in utility costs. Some things that we instituted previously, and we're still realizing them right now. We did the council passed a transient room tax, which generated last year about $46,000. We worked with GBS on our medical plan, and instead of an annual increase that year of 24%, we did it. It ended up just being a 3% annual increase, which saved us about $152,000. And then our workers' comp premiums, it has been as high as $70,000. We've implemented some programs and some incentives to drop that and got it down to $38,000. And as you guys know, the Tremont and Garland Police Department agreement helps us with our safety and our coverage, as Garland pays for some officers for us, but they also get benefits for 24-hour coverage. And then some recent grants that we have received. Not all of these were this current year, especially the fire ones. Most of them were in this current year, but some of them were in just the last couple of years. But the fires received almost $500,000 in grants. The city has received over $500,000 almost in grants. And then I just wanted to point out the donations from our community. We have a great community, and their donations fund the food pantry. And we just started an animal shelter donation And it's had a great response as well. They've already received $7,000 in donations. These are grants that we haven't received, but we have applied for. We've applied for more than $2 million worth of grants. The biggest portion of it with the water, for our water sources, that $2 million grant, and then $300,000 is a CDBG grant that helps the aquifer storage recovery project. And then a few more grants that will help along our downtown and our main street to beautify that. There's $100,000 or so in grants. So the efficiencies and the grants that we've either received or applied for recently are $4.4 million. So we're doing everything we can to make it not such an impact on our citizens. So that being said, I believe that our mission and vision comes into the budgeting process. And if we remember what our mission is and what our vision is as a community and as a city, then we can make wise decisions on what we put into our budget and the programs that we fund. So today we'll be talking about the proposed budget priorities. So a lot of the things that the council's been talking about over the past year, and the priorities that we've picked up on as a staff. We'll talk about what those priorities are and what we've tried to fund in this base budget that we have. I have put together a base budget knowing that there's a lot of things that still need to be worked out as far as medical insurance and some contracts that we have pending with people. This base budget will change one way or another, but this is as close as I could get with the information I have right now. And so in this base budget, we have a recommendation for a cost of living for our current employees. We'll go over that. We have the requests that were submitted by department heads, and we'll go over those requests as well as their 5-year personnel plan. And then we'll move into capital projects and show you what we have available in each of the fund balances, as well as talk about the 5-year capital projects plan. So what we've noticed in the meetings as priorities from the council and the city, personnel is a big one that we'll talk about. Roads, especially 1000 North, is in here, and the plan there is for sure to fund all of the acquisition or the right-of-way acquisitions, the easements, the accesses, so that we can tee it up and be ready to bid out the construction at around this time next year and construct in the summer of 2024. And then we have a big chip seal project that was just awarded or not awarded, but bid out. We opened the bids
today.
Mm-hmm. So that will be in the next budget year. Then, as we talked about the 5-year capital plan, we'll talk about capital projects, equipment and vehicles, and roads. We won't talk much water today. That will be for next discussion. But I wanted to make it a priority that we hear about water, water and roads quite a bit, and that's a priority. And then connecting with the public. So the current personnel recommendations that we've put in this base budget, again, these are variable, these can change, but what we are recommending is that we start to follow the consumer price index year over year from January to January. So I've mapped it out. And over the last 5 years, the consumer price index is there in the yellow. And it was, we were pretty close to it. We historically would do a 3% COLA for our employees. It stayed pretty close, but the last 3 years, it's been very changing. So from 2020 to 2021, it actually went down. That was the COVID year, if you remember. And then 21 to 22 it spiked really high, and that's what we were dealing with last year during this budgeting process. Went to 9%. The council approved a 5% cost of living. And then, so the 2023 is a 7.2%. That equates to $363,000 in total amongst all of the employees. If you break it out in the funds that we're talking about today, the governmental funds, that's a $269,000 increase for the city, and the enterprise funds is a $94,000. Just as a point of reference, Social Security increased in 2023 by 8.7%, and that was the annual cost of living adjustment for Social Security off of their website. So that's the current staff. And then these are the personnel requests that we've received from department heads. The police department has requested five positions, and city management requests one position for a planner, which all 6 of these positions would be governmental funds in the general fund, and it would be a $667,000 annual increase.
Mark, is that reflected in the 2024 budget
It is.
you've given us?
It is. Chief Cordova he put together a slide to kind of give us a history on where they sit in staffing over the past 7 years. And 7 years ago, we had 10 officers. We didn't increase it for 4 years. We increased it 1. We increased 1 more in 21. So they've been behind, as far back as he's gone here, since 2015. Just kind of a history on.
What are they comparing the population to? I mean,
Yeah, so he had another slide. I didn't include it here, but he put the sheriff's office, and I think they were 1 for every 590 citizens or something.
I thought it was Box Elder was one for every.
Box Elder, I think he compared the sheriff's office, Brigham City. What were all of them? I could pull it up, but it was kind of a combined amongst all of the entities in Box Elder County, and what the other entities, how many officers they have per their
I think
population.
Garland was the other one, wasn't it? Was Garland?
Garland was one of them, yeah. I can find that answer. Do you want it now? Do you want me to
no,
pull it
I'm
up?
just wondering, where we're bearing off of. Just Box Elder County then is what we're
Yeah.
talking about here.
Box Elder County, correct.
And can you go back to that slide, just to be clear, because it took me a while to understand it. So in that column where it says officers, it says in the black text is how many officers we have. In the text with parentheses that are highlighted is how many officers we should have had based upon that 606 citizens as the ratio, 1 officer to that 606.
I think our ratio was 900 and some, 1 for every 900 or
I
something.
think we were in the 800.
800, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it right here. So the sheriffs are 1 officer for every 560. Garland is one officer for every 625. Brigham City 1 for 666, and we were 1 for 800. Tremont and Garland combined is 1 for every 880, and Tremont standing alone was 1 for every 966.
Without laboring this thing, if you go to Cache County or Ogden, well, how does that compare?
I think there's some national standards too.
The national average is 400.
Okay, that makes
Okay,
more
that's
sense
the
to me.
national average is 400 per officer, 400 population per officer.
900 and what?
66.
That's Tremont by itself.
Looking ahead on the 5-year, I got the 6 positions we just talked about as the next year's request, is 2024. I've broken this slide down into governmental funds and into enterprise funds. And so that we could see, the difference that the cost it would take for our general governmental revenues versus our utility rates. And so the green are the enterprise funds, the orange are the governmental funds. So ongoing, if we did the 6 positions this year, it would be 667, with no new positions in the enterprise funds this year. And again, this is a 5-year plan. This is fluid. It can change, but this was what the department heads requested. So officers, ongoing, 2 officers per year for the next 2 years after that, with another civilian. And then our parks, as we grow in parks, and as we have a superintendent who has hit his 30 years and has just a few years left, we don't want to leave them.
Plus, he puts up the Christmas decorations, and he's the only one that knows how, so think
Needs
hard.
to train somebody. He's tried to train Wes, but it didn't work.
Didn't work.
This may go without saying, but, so you've put into here projected population growth and included these numbers so that in 5 years from now, if our population's 20,000, then we have enough officers to take care of that,
Right.
correct?
I did not. But
So
can.
we can show
Average
we're
growth.
on the average, about a 6% per year growth rate. So you can sort of extrapolate out from there. This last year was more, but on the average, about 6%.
Okay, so I guess my question still is, it is 6% increase annually. Is this enough ask?
Right.
That's,
We'll check it. We talked to our department heads who gave us what their projections were, but we can go back and double check with the population
Asking for
basis.
everything we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I didn't verify with them, so they may have been projecting that out. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So Mark, reading this, is this telling me that the fire department feels like they have what they need until 2027? Is that,
So I'm guessing that the 3 captains are excluded from this because they're at
Yeah.
They're already in.
They're 23.
right, but what you have right now?
3 additional
that's at
by
6%.
FY '27.
Okay.
Yeah. And this came from Robert.
I see where you're going.
He applied for that grant, the Safe Communities grant. And had he received that grant, he would have had to hire those 3 plus the 3 captains now. Because that's the standard that they wouldn't have funded it unless it was with that standard of a 5-person.
So let me get this straight then. So these numbers are us trying to catch up to today's numbers. Taking growth into consideration. Is that what I'm hearing?
So Britt and I just put some numbers together here real quick here. So 6 years, if we maintain 6% growth, that's probably what we're gonna, we could be around 15.3 or 4. And then you divide it by,
631.
As far
divide by 631, that's 24,
population.
that's 24 officers. In 5 years, if we maintain the 6% growth rate.
And this is 19, so we really need to add 6 more officers to that
As we continue
Projection.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the next 5 years.
Do we know what the growth is right now?
6% average,
No, not on the average. I mean, right now. This
8%,
year.
8%,
Growth?
8 or 9% growth, yeah,
From when to when?
last January to this January.
Okay.
Based on Paul Fulgham's ERUs.
So when I talk to the bankers, I mean, they've stopped lending. So it's really slowed down. How many house or permits have we offered since January?
January, I think just 1 or 2.
It's almost shut
Yeah.
off.
But what we're finding is, but what we're seeing are rentals and, you know, Matheson and all the other
Getting
rentals
filled up.
taking up the difference.
Yeah. Surprisingly, we do have on the horizon some developments that are being submitted and being, followed through the entitlement process. So I actually asked Steve to send me what he projects, is still remaining in inventory, along with what he's projecting is going to come online within this next year. And maybe Mark will pull it up, and we can talk about it in the city manager's report, so you can just sort of get a glimpse of what it's looking
he's
like.
projecting.
Just ones that have been entitled and are in the permitting process, building permits, and ones that are on the verge of being eligible for building permits.
Curtis, does 6% sound aggressive, or what do you think? I mean, should we do 4 to be realistic when we're trying to budget 5 years out?
Man, wish I had my crystal
Well, I
ball.
mean, and I realize
yeah,
that too, but
nah.
I mean, we went like this, and now it's coming down when you start talking about growth.
Yeah, the prospects that I foresee, because of interest rates being where they're at, I think your home growth is probably going to slow down. But the interesting part is that there's a lot more apartments that are being built in Tremont, a little bit more of the low income housing, and that's something I'm not. I need to double check with Sean if we've got some low income housing. But given those aspects, if you have the apartments, if you have the townhouses that are a little bit more, I can see that sustaining while these interest rates are higher. And then as we see interest rates back off, probably 3 years down the road, and they come into a line that people start expecting to see. Right now, we're in shock because we went from 3 to 6.5 in like 8 months, and everybody's in sticker shock. A year from now, nobody's going to remember the 3%. They're going to start going, "Oh, I can get a rate for 6.25. Wow, I need to jump on it." I think you'll start seeing the homes coming back up, and I can see us getting back up closer to that 4 to 5% growth. The other thing that stands up here is it's cheaper than Salt Lake area, cheaper than Ogden.
And so that's what brings growth to our area too.
And I think that's why Tremont may see a little bit higher growth than some of those more expensive markets. So I can see us getting back up into that 5% range. The 6% is probably a good long-term average. But you could stay lower for the first couple of years.
I'm just saying for planning purposes, 5 years out, I just think 6% is aggressive, so.
Yeah. Historically, it's 3% is what we've seen.
I mean, if it backed off to 5 or 4.5, I think it's gonna be more realistic.
4 puts us at 20, or
The 22.
I mean, all these numbers we're
22
talking about,
officers,
you know, that 5%, 6%, going back to 3.5, where we've been over the last 10 years, it might be a little bit more palatable.
4 years of growth. Yeah, about 14,000.
So this is exactly what I'm looking for. I just like to see that projection in there. For example, with the fire department, if we add an additional 4,000 people to our population, is 3 officers or 3 firefighters enough, or do we need 1 or 2 more? And I'd like to see that added into this, because then that gives us a true picture. Well, not true, but a more accurate picture.
These, to be fair, these are Chief Cordova's, that's his recommendation, and so that's what Mark went off of is Chief Cordova's.
Saying, Chris, isn't the fire department looking maybe for a battalion chief or something like that? You think we're more than 5? Okay.
I mean, really, we need to set the standard with the captains, get them up and running first, and then see how things go. The problem we're gonna see is, as the population grows, we're already seeing it now, is our demand for transfers and sending our folks out of town. I mean, just in the last year, I think our transfers, I would say, probably 5%, 10% more than what we've seen last year.
Yeah.
And so as the population keeps growing, not only do we respond to more calls in town, but then we've got that demand for those extra transports from one facility to another. So that's a big hit on our,
I thought that was far out number for the fire department to go to a fourth personally.
Yeah.
So we'll have 4 with the captains, that would add
Well,
another.
a fifth, but you know.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to add to that conversation. I spoke with Robert several weeks ago, and we were talking about staffing and just sort of what he kind of thought we needed, and to get to that extra person, that fourth person, you know, to help handle the transfer volume. He suggested we try to do another part-time employee, and he felt like with the captains, you know, that have been added, and then with an additional part-time that, you know, would help cover the simultaneous calls and the transfers out. He really felt like, you know, that would be a good staffing plan. I haven't had a chance to talk to Chris about it, but
I think that's gonna be, we'd have to increase the part-time pool before we could do something like that. We're filling what we've got now. We start adding more, I think we're gonna have some holes and some gaps in there, not enough people to be able to fill those part-time roles, so we'd have to increase the staffing there.
cool. Okay.
Something we can have conversation on.
Yeah.
4% long-term.
We know what's going to slow down.
I will say, Brett, if you're looking for something along here for projections, if we just focus on police officers for a second, the 7 that are up there just get you the 19 to hit that coverage ratio. If the council's comfortable with that, roughly 600-ish residents per officer, even if you go down to 3%, every year you're adding about a part-time employee. So you'd add one position every other year to this. So over the course of 5 years, you'd be adding 2 to 3 officers in addition to what's up there.
I think 3 more.
And so that's probably a minimum type of baseline, you know, going at 3% growth. Anything more than that, you might have to add an officer a little bit faster. So
And this looks like 7, but there's that sergeant, that's a position right underneath. And I don't think, since his slide and since this, I don't think it added the position that we added for Nick as well. So that's 2 more that you
So
could
up
count.
there, the civilian and the sergeant count as.
I don't know if civilian counts as it, but the sergeant definitely counts as the, because it said officers per, and civilian is admin staff.
So that would put us at 20. We have 12 now?
12 Tremont, yeah.
Okay. We have guard,
We have 3 Garland.
oh, so we're at 15. That's something we're not figuring into
And how
this.
does
We
this,
don't figure in we didn't figure in the Garland population in this little exercise we were doing.
Okay.
yeah, but we won't be covering Garland's police officers when they go on board, right?
No.
So we shouldn't be putting them in the budget.
You're right.
No, we wouldn't.
So we're talking 3%, right? Kind of as a rule of thumb.
I think that's a baseline. I think you could plan, maybe an aggressive side would be the 6%, but I was just looking for, as you were saying, the 3% growth. It's about a half an officer a year.
I went back several years and calculated our growth rate over long-term. And, 4%, 3%, 3 to 4% is probably going to be right. There's times when we're at 2%, or there's times when we're negative, but, between 3 and 4% is probably a fair.
Can we put those
Long-term.
projections in this then?
Yeah, so-
So 3% growth is what we're looking at? And
With that in there, that just means in 27 and 28, that's 1 more officer each one of those years, and that will get us up to where we need to be.
and then is our capital structure, cars and that kind of stuff, keeping up with the 3% growth too when we put the budget together on a 5-year basis?
Well, we'll touch base on the capital in a minute, and Mark's done a really good job with that. But those 2 officers that we just talked about in addition, no, they're not going to be up there, and so those will be additional capital we'll have to factor in as well.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we're good on personnel
Okay,
for
and
the,
before you go on. And so for parks and streets and all that, even with the additional growth, this is enough ask.
I think, yeah, according to the current department heads who looked out the 5 years.
Okay.
So I'll touch base with each of them and make sure that growth projections were in there. And
I think we should.
Talking with Paul, in Public Works, of course, part of that is down there in the enterprise funds, but the streets and everything, he felt like things were, they were pretty good for right now, so.
What's the role of the planner?
What's that?
The role of the planner that we're asking for?
They would,
Their role?
they would do what I do, and then I would do city management things. I mean, there's a lot of things that we plan by committee, and the DRC would still be, very involved, and I would be too, to the extent that, I'd be involved in the conversations to know exactly what infrastructure is needed, so we can, and the impact fees and the financial aspects of growth, and making sure that services that we provide, exceed our growth and capacity. But they would do plan reviews. They'd be working with the Planning Commission. Depending on what skill set we're able to obtain in a planner, they'd be working on the development agreements and tracking the development agreements through. I think we do a fairly good job, on the front end, but there's things on the back end, just because of the volume of applications that are coming through. I feel like there's some holes in our processes. The other thing that we're working on doing is getting some software that I think will really help with the organization of both building and planning, as far as the submittals and the comments, and getting complete applications and communicating with the applicants. So it's been more and more demanding when the city, in the last 3 to 4 years, as development pressures have increased, it's really put a strain on the fact that we don't really have someone solely dedicated for that.
And the other thing, Steve had a unique skill set also that sort of has brought on this idea of a planner, where he's been able to kind of cover both areas. That's sort of a unique skill set I heard you talking
Yeah.
about. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I can't, I think one of the other benefits the council may realize by having this position is exactly drawn by the questions that you were just asking. If a development comes in, what's the impact going to be on the water? What's the impact going to be on the police? What's the impact going to be on the fire department? And they can actually help the council understand the impact of some of those, because that's what they're going to focus on. Where right now, I'm going to speak on behalf of Sean, but his attention's drawn in a lot of numerous other areas. And even though he does a great job of trying to present that, this would give a focused effort so they could actually come back to the council and say, this development would, by doing this, could have this impact on your police department, and really focus on what the impacts to the city are by development, so that you can plan out and build projections of what the revenues coming in are going to be, and how is that going to really impact the residents of the city for each development, and could be beneficial from that standpoint, unless I'm misstating, Sean.
Yeah, I think between him or her, it could be
The
the planner and the city manager. We would do that. So, just as a point of reference, like today, I spent all day reviewing plans, development plans, 2 different townhouse projects. Well, we can go over them, but there's like 3 or 4 applications on DRC tomorrow, and it takes a lot of time. And then to follow up, you're fielding questions. Developers are calling, asking questions. There's just a lot of volume, relatively even today. And Steve did a great job shoring us up in that. He handled the procedural aspects of planning, and I would do more of the reviews and the agreements. But it is a process that can't go ignored. State legislature dictates and demands like certain timeframes, which we have to respond. It can be really labor intensive.
Okay, So now we'll move into the different funds. So on your sheet, it's all the stuff in the black for the general fund, food pantry, recreation, parks, fire, capital projects, vehicle capital projects, and transportation. Each of these has a fund balance at the beginning of the year that we can utilize for the next year's capital projects and different project costs in each of the funds. And on this slide, I know it's a lot, but the left column, it's each of the funds, and then you read it left to right. So, for example, the food pantry has a fund balance of $120,000. They don't have any 5-year capital projects. So I didn't do one slide of all of our capital project needs, just because each fund is funded, it gets its revenue in different ways, and it was kind of hard. So this is as good as I could get to show it all in one slide. But for example, the food pantry, $121,000 to spend. They don't have any real big capital projects, and their revenues match their expenditures. So if they don't put anything away for the next 5 years, they'll still have that $121,000. But then you go down to, let's say, the second to the bottom, that's the transportation capacity fund. That's our road projects. We've tried to save money there as much as we can. It gets a little bit of revenue with some impact fee, but we have almost $10 million worth of road projects in the next 5 years that we could do easily and chew that money up. So I'll go through each one of these funds individually. Some of them will be quicker than others, but please stop me if you have any questions or comments about it. So just a little background on the food pantry. For the past 3 years, donations have been amazing with the food pantry. The community's really supported the food pantry. We've received about $80,000 worth of donations. They spend about $50,000 for all their operating costs, and so that fund balance has been able to increase because of the generosity of the community. So if they have to do any sort of capital projects, new shelving or anything to make the food pantry operate better, that they have some money there available. So this is what their 5-year plan will look like. On the other slides as well. This one, nothing proposed. So that's the food pantry. The recreation fund is just the sports, the adult sports, the youth sports, and the community events. All of those pay for their direct costs, so they'll pay for the trophies, the supervisors, the equipment to run the program. What it doesn't pay for, however, is the administrative costs. We call it the non-departmental costs, or the building and the staff and the computers and the software and things like that. So historically, we've transferred in about $175,000 to the recreation fund to cover those non-departmental expenses. And they've been able to grow their fund balance to about $185,000. And they don't have anything proposed. The Parks Fund, this is, this fund accounts for park-related impact fee revenues and park-related impact fee construction projects that add capacity to the city's parks and trail system. So, for example, we had a big purchase this year of the Stokes Park property, and that added capacity to our parks system, and so it came out of this fund. This one does receive revenues. It receives revenues of, depending on how many impact fees come in. But it's been anywhere from $170,000 to $500,000 annually of revenues coming in, yes.
Mark, so where's the 3 future parks to be built?
So you have the BR Mountain Park, the Stokes Park, and then you have the River's Edge Park and the Heritage,
Is it
Harvest
Harvest?
Acres.
Yeah.
Over on the south end of town by the freeway, across from the cemetery. So,
Well, kind of down the street from Palmer Pack.
yeah. Right next to the freeway.
Yeah.
So these are this is the 5-year capital, what we've been able to capture in a 5-year capital projects plan for the parks. A lot of it's in engineering for these future parks. And then to buy canal shares so that we can water the parks. The new ones came with canal shares from the developer, so we don't, it's really the current parks that we have, with Library, North Park, and well, North Park and Meadow Park. Library was on Culinary, so. There's a phase of the Canal Rail Trail that we are obligated to construct in the next couple of years, right there by the Rocky Mountain Power site on 600 North. And that will be a section of that trail that goes along. It goes from there to, well, just around their site is what we have to construct, right?
Right.
Around Rocky Mountain Power, that field and back over to the park and
It
6
follows
North
the
and
railroad
Northwest.
corridor and then turns and follows the property line of the single-family homes that surround the Rocky Mountains property on 4th West and 6th North.
And then all the way up to 10th North along the railroad bed, is that what you're doing?
Well, yeah, so when we rezoned the property, we negotiated with the developer that they would actually construct that trail. So, depending on when development occurs, is sort of when that segment of the trail is going to go in.
That's
Unless
not part of what we're talking about here.
it's just really from 6 North to 4th West, if you can picture that in your mind's eye, along the railroad tracks and then back of property lines of homes.
Come about at our house, come out on 4th West about.
Where's that on there? How much is that going to cost?
We need to figure that out. I think we put in 100,000. I think just as a placeholder. I don't know if it's going to really be that expensive. I need to get an engineer's estimate to really understand what those costs are.
Yeah, we've done our best to get the costs. A lot of the costs we received in 2018 or 2000, and costs have gone up. So a lot of them are placeholders, but it's something we can budget for and at least know that it's there, and so it doesn't fall off and get lost. So, for example, pickleball courts, I'm sure it's going to be more, but how many times do you want to update the cost of, I got the cost for those pickleball courts, 2017 or something. And I'm sure it's going to be more than that, but I don't know. It's a placeholder at this point, but it's an idea of what's coming down the pipeline. So, but yeah, we need to figure out when and how much it's going to cost to construct these other 3 parks, and yeah. So this is the 5-year plan for the the Parks Fund. Then our next fund goes to the Fire and EMS. Currently, they have $1 million available in fund balance. This just kind of gives you an idea of how much they receive each year in ambulance fees, and also transfers in from the general fund. So for the past 3 years, in fiscal year 2022, we went through the truth in taxation. So we transferred in $200,000 of that truth in taxation money that came in, and we continued that in this year's budget. The graph on the right, the blue shows how much we charge in ambulance fees, and the orange is how much we write off in ambulance fees. The yellow is the percentage that we write off, and then the gray is the net and how much we take in if you subtract those two out. So their 5-year capital plan adds up to about $1.6 million. The biggest purchases on their 5-year capital plan is a fire truck, 2 ambulance purchases, and gurneys. And so, yeah, so they'll continue to receive money, but we got to be cautious because we did appropriate 3 more full-time employees there. So the money that they receive, you know, their fund balance won't grow as quickly as it has in the past because of those employees. Then we go to the capital projects fund. This fund does not have any source of revenue other than transfers in from the general fund. It's the only way that we can pay for any of these projects, other than grants or interloan funds or things, but it doesn't have an ongoing source of revenue coming into this.
What was the big in 2012? Do you remember?
Why we transferred that much?
Yeah. What did we do big in, I mean, I know that's 11 years ago, but,
That's not an expense, that's how much the general fund transferred in.
oh, transferred into
And
the,
so, yeah, 2012 was one of those years where the revenues in the general fund were more than the expenses.
Okay.
And so we were able to move. At that point in time in 2012, we didn't have other capital projects funds that were diverting out as well. So there wasn't the capacity fund, there wasn't the equipment fund, and so the vast majority of the money went just right into this one.
So these are some things that we have captured on the 5-year capital projects plan for the capital projects fund. The biggest one is this chip seal project that, if you go back here, all of these transfers for $300,000 have been earmarked for this, knowing that this project was going to happen. So I think since 2017, we've been transferring the $300,000 a year. And that's added up to the 1.5. The bids came in lower than that, so that's good. So we'll be able to use some of that money to go to the other capital projects in here. You'll see a road project on here, and some of the road projects will have to go into this fund because the roads fund, the transportation capacity fund, it's only there to add capacity. And so if you just pulverize and repave a existing road and don't add in capacity to it, then it's paid for out of this fund. So that's where you'll see 1000 North, not the section that we're widening, but the rest of the section for 1000 North. A lot of parking lot, resurfacing, resurfaced tennis courts, just anything that's 5-year or $5,000 or more and is tangible. Okay, tell me what the capital project is again.
So it's a cost of over $5,000 and has a useful life of more than 1 year. Normally, it's a lot longer, but it's got to have a useful life of at least 1 year, otherwise it's just consumed in a year.
so what's the 50 and the 75 on the cemetery? I can see the 50 for the sprinkler system, and but that's probably not the road.
Yeah, it's kind of in phases
Kind
is
of.
how we've planned it. And so first phase, maybe doing the sprinklers, next phase, paving the roads. And again, that was an estimate that Paul gave us of how much he thought it would cost to expand to the west, that cemetery to the west. Okay, then we have 2 more funds. This is our capital vehicle and equipment. So this is all of our vehicles, big equipment like a lot of copy machines come out of this one. The equipment to equip the police vehicles comes out of this one. UTVs, ATVs, just tractors, different things. There's large equipment, the street sweeper. So So this is a history of what we've transferred in from the sales, from the general fund to this fund over the last 10 years. And here are the, to kind of go along with the new police officers, and also to replace the old outdated equipment in the police and in the streets and in the parks. Those are the ones who submitted requests for it. I did check the senior centers, all their vehicles are fairly new. The food pantry has new vehicles. So I think this captures, and a lot of our equipment come out of the enterprise funds, come out of the water fund, come out of the sewer fund, and those funds pay for it outside of the transfers from the general fund.
I would think them senior vehicles are probably gonna come up a little quicker than what we think.
Yeah,
'Cause didn't we buy 4 at once?
yeah, I looked at it today.
3 and then 1, something?
I think it was 3, then 1. Yeah.
The
But
in-towners
they don't have a
probably,
lot of miles.
they don't? Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I think they were at like 50 or 60,000 miles is all.
Oh.
Bought them brand new, so. And the last one is that roads project, the Transportation Capacity Fund. We've tried to transfer in, bigger amounts here because the projects cost a lot more here. For this year, you'll see the first column of numbers, and those are all acquisitions of right-of-ways. For 10th North, 2650 West, Rocket Road, and BR Mountain Road. The good thing about this one is we have that, the first two, right, Sean? The first two have been funded by the corridor.
Yep. Yeah, those are funded projects. I just need to finish the contracts and negotiate with the property owners.
But I just added it to it. So if we get grants and stuff, that will just allow us to keep that money and move it on to the next project. So, so that's our 5-year plan. Again, it just had to be based off of each fund. It's kind of too big to do all in one slide. Then the general fund, just because this is the fund that transfers into all of these capital projects and all of these, like the fire fund and the recreation fund. I just wanted to give you an overview of the last, so fiscal year 2022, the one that we just got our audited statements from. The general fund brought in $7.6 million. And this is a percentage of how we received the money, how we received all that money. Property tax at 25%, sales tax at 34%. Other taxes like our franchise tax or our telecom tax goes at 16% of it. Our building related licenses and permits go at 5%. Senior center contributions go at 4%. And then the other income. And this is how we spend it. So this is by department. This is kind of goes along your list there. And how much each department spent out of those revenues. So it just kind of gives you an idea of where our money's going and how much it costs to operate a city. And the slide on the left, or the graph on the left, just kind of shows you those transfers that I showed you, transfers out of the general fund, and how much each of those went to each different fund, those last 3 years. So I know that was a lot. I hope it was good information for you, just to kind of show you where we're at on funds and upcoming budget meetings. So we talked about the general governmental funds today. We have 3 more council meetings until the tentative budget is passed. So the next budget, I wanted to talk about the enterprise funds, the revenue generating funds. And then we can have a general discussion on all of it together. And we can make decisions and have discussions on what we want to include, what we want to take out, the variable costs. You know, the projects and the personnel is all variable at this point, but it's kind of what we've received as recommendations and requests. And then depending on if we want to go through, hold a truth and taxation hearing, it's different from June 20th on. June 20th, if we don't, we adopt the final budget. If we do want to go through one, then we adopt another tentative budget. And then we tell the county auditor what our proposed tax rate would be. And then we hold a truth and taxation hearing. So, yeah, go ahead.
Mayor, could I? So, you know, Brett asked a really good question. I didn't give a very good response in that planner, so I just wanted to go back and just touch upon it a little bit more and just let you know that, you know, one of the things that when we're talking about that position and how to fund it, currently right now, all the engineering services are borne by the general fund. And when you're doing development reviews, the engineers primarily looking at roads, water, sewer, storm drain. And so we felt like a better allocation of the engineering costs would be borne by the utility funds. So that's something that we're shifting over to the enterprise funds, is some of that cost would still bear some of that cost in the general fund. The other thing I just wanted to point out was for housing, you know, the state's gotten more and more aggressive on affordable housing with more requirements and reporting and actionable plans. I think this legislative session, they actually passed penalties, but I need to go back and look for those who are non-compliant. So every year we need to report. So we're scrambling to try to do some of that, implement those strategies that you've selected. And so that's something that the planner would do. The other thing I just wanted to mention too, just by comparison, if you look at Brigham City, we're about half their size, they have 2 planners, 1 community development director, and I believe a secretary. And really that's, you know, and I'm not sure where they're at in growing. I think they actually still have quite a few developments that they're processing, but that's all just to give you maybe a little bit more context about the position. Frankly, I feel like the state should allow us to use some of our RDA funds to pay for some of the housing staffing, you know, that we're required to do. And that might be something we talk to our representative and ask them to free up some of the housing funds to actually pay for the cost of administration of the requirements that the legislation requires of us now.
So that planner 2 position that we had, that you showed us at the beginning, are you saying that one, we would take that more so out of the enterprise funds?
The general fund. We'd take it out of the general fund, but we would take some of the expenses that we're paying right now for community development, which I think should be borne in the enterprise funds, and moving them there.
Not the position itself?
Yeah, so, right. Well, it's actually, we're going to transfer money in, but the net effect is that some of those enterprise funds are paying for the engineering and the development costs of reviewing infrastructure utilities.
Okay. Any questions for
I was just
or
doing
Mark?
I was just doing a quick calculation on, and believe me, these are quick. Okay, but if you took our property tax, divided it by the amount of citizens, it's $209 per citizen, and you increase that to over the next few years at a 4% increase, our property tax just from growth alone would go up $538,000. Okay, and our sales tax would go up $626,000. So that's an additional $1.1 million in additional revenue from growth. Okay, so let's just make sure that when we're putting these projections in, we also put projections for growth in there to get those revenues in there as well. Okay, because, I mean, $1.1 million is significant in this formula, so.
So, yeah, as we follow up on that, I just want to make sure we're talking the same language. The 4% growth was just on the current property taxes?
No, 4% population growth
Okay, 4% population growth
annually.
annually. And to get the property tax increase, you multiplied that by what?
I took what our property tax right now is,
Per citizen? Okay,
citizen,
okay.
okay, and just increase that over the next 5 years.
So you
From
take
11,000 to
So you
14,000.
take per citizen. You
Yeah,
take
I mean,
population
that was-
times 4%.
Yeah, not
and
per
then-
family or anything, but just
Yeah.
per person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
But I mean, that
understand
was
what
just
you're
a
saying.
rough way of looking at.
Uh-huh.
We've got to have some increases coming in revenues as well, not just expenses.
No, it's a very valid point, and I just want to make sure I understood where the council was coming from, because I think we can take that type of baseline and we can go back through and look at what property tax is actually growing based off of the population growth numbers and actually validate
Yeah,
that's
sure.
very, because I realize it's quick and rough and
Yeah.
and so we can go through and validate that.
Okay, and sales tax.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, the other thing that, we could really do is if we really got into an aggressive campaign with trying to get businesses to come to town and try to increase more local shopping, that could do nothing but pad that sales tax revenue for our city and help so the citizens don't have to come up with as much real estate tax. So,
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, our growth, our property tax income revenue from growth last year was about $80,000. And so that's, that's the increase in property tax revenues. It comes from growth. 80 grand last year. And so is that kind of how does that factor into what?
well, if you look here, at what was budgeted at 1.996 million, and you subtract out last year's at 189,352, it's $102,000 in it additional
Is where they're budgeting.
in
you're
property
just going
tax.
out
So that would just be growth, because that's naturally not taking any sales tax revenue increases in, just off of these numbers.
So just out of curiosity, can you pop back to your population slide?
The police one?
No, you had the population one. Yeah, I think it was on the police side.
Yeah, so you're 11.5, and I just,
If we grew by 1,200 people in that year, just doing quick math with you, and we went up $102,000 in property taxes. That's coming out about $85 per person versus the couple hundred. And that's the part that I'm going to be interested in, is how much that number really is. See if we can't, I think we'll have some numbers where we can get that approximation and really zone in on that, because I want to recognize, it's a really valid point. We need to try and anticipate what that growth number is in property taxes.
I mean, to go along with that, I mean, I know what we're trying to do. We're trying to be careful when we do the budget. I mean, we go from actual in 2022, 8.2 million in income. Then when we budget for 2023, we drop $1 million out, 7.2 million. But we just arbitrarily say we're not going to make $1 million.
That's the ARA funds that we received.
Is it?
The other intergovernmental, unless it went from 1 to
or
4.
So there's
1 million.
500,000.
500,000 of it.
And what's that transfer for 347?
To the fire, I think.
What?
I mean,
That's what we
2020.
budgeted to balance to take from
Oh, for the general fund,
the
yeah.
general fund, fund balance.
It looks like we're being ultra conservative on it. That's my point is.
If you look at sales tax, your point is sort of, right now, this 2022 actual is about 2.6. And we're budgeting being conservative in our budgeting at a 2.1.
So here, my point is, we're being way conservative on the income, and we're way overshooting the expenses. When we're looking at this thing for a 5-year thing, and ultimately what we're looking at as a city council is, can I look at my constituents and say, we're gonna raise real estate taxes because we need enough money to run the city? We need to show the income on the same level that the expenses are going up, so we can see a truer picture. We don't want to be conservative when we're doing this budget. We want to show reality.
Yeah, and one thing that the budget doesn't show are these transfers into our capital projects funds. So these transfers happen to be the surplus that we have at the end of the year that we transfer into our capital projects fund. So if the budget ran true to form, we made exactly what we said we were going to make and spent exactly what we said we were going to spend, then there would be zero transfers to any of these capital projects funds, and we wouldn't have any money to buy the capital equipment or to buy
Road
to
projects.
do the project
Road projects,
or the
yeah.
road projects. So we can show these transfers in the budget, but what we've done is the department has been really good and at managing their budget and actually turning back money. And then, like you said, the revenue, we do want to buffer for, a recession. We saw a 13% decrease in sales tax in 2008.
Or 9, whatever.
Yeah,
the-
between like 2009 and 2000.
Well, then we need to show that same attitude when we're looking at growth and expenses. I mean, you're playing both sides of
Yeah,
the,
so do we show these transfers early because we have to pay for the 5-year plan?
they need to be
So-
budgeted out, in my opinion. I don't know how everybody else feels, but it's like we're not, just because we don't look at them and then we transfer them at the end of the year, we need to be looking at them up front as part of the budgeting process. Just to show
Well-
true picture, instead of showing it after, you got excess funds, now we're gonna transfer it. It means a little bit
From
more work.
budgeting,
but
from
we
a
need to see
budgeting
it.
standpoint, you can be conservative, but from a budgeting standpoint, I can see your point. I'm, again, looking at the sales tax revenue.
Let me just make one more statement, then I'm gonna quit. So on an annual, year to year, you wanna play this game. You wanna go short on income and long on expenses. When we're looking at a 5-year history, we need to show it more as reality, because we're gonna be going in deciding whether or not we need to increase taxes or not. And so that's a different ballgame than going from year to year. And so what you're doing, when I'm looking at this the way I understand it, we're being conservative by knocking down the income and in my opinion, overlooking on the expenses. We need to show a true picture on both sides when we're looking at raising taxes,
How
period.
How would you like, because we felt like, there's no right or wrong answer. It's really what you want and what your tolerance for risk is. We felt like the 13%, we took essentially the high and then back sales tax off 13%. Do you want us to budget the full 13% or the full past fiscal year that we received in sales taxes?
No.
How would you like to see us budget sales tax? Because that's,
You would want to take at least a 5-year,
A trend, you're
A
just talking
trend.
about a trend.
you like to see a trend and project?
you want
Okay.
to use
When it comes
trends.
to the 5-year plan, I think that's what we're looking at, is it more of a trend?
You want to get as close as you can to reality on a 5-year program.
Sure, we could do that. And then because we can trend out future fiscal years and what historically we've seen in growth and try to show those trends. For this fiscal year, how would you like to see sales tax budgeted? Because that's really the big variable. There's
You can
some,
go back, you can establish a trend just based on our history. and get a pretty good idea of what, we would expect in the future. And then you can sort of build in some sort of tolerance, to, variability and stuff like that. But
From year to year.
from year to year, but we've got enough history that we can sort of, I think we can sort of establish a pretty good trend, plus or minus,
Sure.
and,
You got two things going on here. You got the annual budget, and, I feel good about how you guys handle that, but a 5-year pro forma needs to be closer to what we think reality is. And I know, 5 years is a long time out there, but you got to do it based on 5-year past on a trend basis, not the last 5-year average, but the 5-year trend
Yeah.
and go forward.
Yeah, we could do that.
And I'm going to jump in here just because the last 3 to 4 years worth of sales tax has been astronomically high for a couple reasons. One, at first you had Amazon come on charging sales tax on shipped in goods, where previously that hadn't been captured. And then the laws got adjusted to where you could capture on all of the internet sales. And so over the past few years, what we've seen is an astronomical increase in our sales tax relative to what the growth was previously, because it's capturing all of those internet sales. And so as more and more vendors are getting captured into this, we've seen our sales tax grow at really high rates. We're talking 15, 17, 18% type of things. Over the course of the next 5 years, that we're going to see that flatten out, because you're going to capture all of those internet sales, and eventually you're just going to get to your normal growth patterns like what we'd expect. And so we can absolutely trend this out and bring it, but
think you
it's
bring
going to
up a
be a
good
trend a little bit
point.
lower.
That, if we go before the internet sales tax was
Absolutely.
established, that doesn't give us a true picture of what's really going on. So really, we might only want to go back 3 or 4 years or whatever it
We'll
was.
figure out an appropriate way, and we'll present that as to how we calculated it, so that we're clear and it's something that we can all agree upon. But I don't really feel comfortable standing here and saying we're going to project out at 15 or 17% growth over the next 5 years. That's
And I'm glad you're thinking that way. That's the way we need to take a look at it.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, in another 3 or 4 months, we're going to be deciding whether or not to raise real estate taxes. And so
gonna be
that's
tough.
like,
Yeah.
we got to be really careful with this thing. So
So one of the questions that I have is a follow-up, just so that we can make sure that we're on the same page. We have a number of projects in here that we've presented as being unfunded, because there's no as Mark indicated, there's no transfers out to go into these funds. And what we're going to have to do is decide how much of that funding needs to happen in via transfers to cover these capital projects. And so this is going to be a great source of discussion that we can have over the next few weeks, and be thinking about what projects really get funded, how much they need to be funded, so that we can put those numbers into the transfers amount. We can fully recognize the revenues, but then you're going to plan for actually funding the projects to kick it over, so that we're all on the same page and have a plan for what projects get funded and how they get funded,
great.
if that works.
Yeah, that's what we need to see, I think.
Is that the consent?
Yeah,
That would, yeah.
I agree.
It'd be very good. Good
Because
comments.
that total was like 9 something, wasn't it? In the red on our capital projects unfunded right now was 9 million.
Yeah,
Close.
there's, on the roads one.
Oh, right there.
7
yeah.
million.
7 million.
There it is.
7 million.
If we add up all those all the red numbers, there's going to be a lot of money that's going to need to be transferred out over the course of the next 5 years. But we can make that plan up and marshal it out and see how that impacts out.
Any other questions, council?
5 point, did you say 13%? Okay, that 2.1 million, that doesn't add up. That should be at 202,252,000.
It's 2.3 for 24 budget. So I took 22's actual And
Where you at, Brett? What's going on?
Well, his actual was 589, and if we decrease 13% from sales tax actuals of 589, then, okay, so you're saying the 13% would be the 2.3 million?
yeah, that's
Okay, all right.
24's budget. Yep.
That's fair. I was looking at the 2.1 million.
Yeah, that's the current year. So we did that again last with the other actual
Okay, and so
year before.
just quickly on the 2023 budget that we're in now,
Yeah.
where are we at on sales tax? We up or down?
We're
We're up
up.
from that.
I actually have the January numbers. Thank you, Lindsay, for having this.
I seen them too.
So we're running, right now, we're running through January. We're still finalizing February's numbers up, but through January, we're running at about 1.7 million, so we're about 81% of the budget right now.
So is that, do you have a line on there that says if it
We're
ended,
up about
where
200
would
and
we
something
be?
thousand over the average, aren't we?
Yeah, that was on
The challenge is, we've collected the vast majority. The largest sales tax comes in January and February, so February's number, because they're related to November, December's. It's a 2-month behind type deal. If I'm projecting this out on the fly really quick, yeah, that's the problem is there was a fairly significant decrease. I think it was like 9%, 8%. It hurt. And so,
When did that hit?
the February, December sales were horrible. And it's still late, it's still a little bit too early to tell to see if that's just late filers or if it actually did decrease that much. We'll know more once we get the March payment. But there was a large decrease. It was more than what I was expecting.
You're talking about the January,
Look at the February number.
well, the February number, what I'm looking at is about a $5,000 decrease
Compared to last
over
year,
over the previous period.
over the last
Over
year or the last month?
A year ago,
Last
Yeah,
year.
2%.
about a 2% drop, but it was,
50,000 in the previous month more. And another 40,000 in the month before that.
In the January and February?
so we're up,
30,000.
our average is about 245, almost 246 a month. That can change, but,
The last half of the year is a lot better than the first half of the year. I've been doing this long enough that,
oh, no, I'm not challenging,
Yeah,
I'm not challenging
it's,
anything here. I'm just,
I mean, you can see the growth pattern.
yeah.
They all drop off in February, March.
But according to, you see where I'm headed with this.
I
The
do,
2.1 is going to be way too conservative a number to be throwing in here if our actual's at 1.9 already, and we still have 4 months to go. And so,
I think we'll probably, well, yeah, we'll get at least 30%, we'll probably be 50%.
But what Curtis is calculating, just to be clear, so you're thinking be more aggressive on sales tax, but then also pre-fund the transfers for the capital projects? Because, we've talked about in the past that sales tax, the state legislature authorized cities to have that funding source for bonded indebtedness, which we use for Utopia, generally, in theory, and capital projects, which is what we transfer out at the end of the year. So budget aggressively, but also pre-fund those transfers to the capital projects
I wouldn't
fund.
pre-fund. I would wait till the end of the year, but I would budget.
I think that's what we're.
Well, that's what I meant, yeah, I should show them the
So we can
budget.
get a true picture of what, we're budgeting out 5 years.
Is that right? Budget it, but then we'll see where we're at the end of the year.
End of the year, that's when you actually make the transfers, when you can see where everything's settled. That's what you do now, is you wait for things to settle out. But we're blind because we don't know those are expenses that are gonna be happening.
Yeah, what we haven't done, which would be a little bit different, is we haven't budgeted those transfers in, except for the recreation, the fire. But for capital projects, we haven't budgeted transfers. So when we do that, it'll reduce, the revenue that's available for the general fund services. So for all these new officers, for example, it would essentially reduce what's available.
That's if you make the transfer, but if you don't make the transfer,
Well, just to balance the budget, I'm talking about from a budgeting perspective.
because then at the end of the year, you can make adjustments when you need to. If you're not making the transfers during the year,
Yeah, so.
doing now.
I'm just talking, yes, we'll do it, what you're saying. I'm just saying to balance the budget, we'll need to, if we show that we're going to transfer money out at the end of the year, even though we won't actually do it until the end of the year, we still need to balance the budget. And so we'll need to show some kind of revenue to balance it, whether it's appropriating fund balance, whether it's increasing property taxes. It's got to be, we've just got to figure out how we're going to balance the budget. If we build those transfers into the budgeting
The
document.
budget, just in the budget, so we can get a kind of a true picture of,
But that's where we really can't come back and show if there's going to be a need for a property tax increase, or if there's going to have to be some reduction to the transfers, or it's going to open up a lot of discussion to where the decision becomes not so much about how the sales tax was estimated, but what does the city plan to do with the finances? How are we going to make this plan work? And,
That's why you haven't put them in.
we'll put them in, we'll put in everything gross and accurate, and we'll put it in there, and there could be a line sitting there going, this is the unfunded amount, what do we want to do? And it's either cut expenses, put a property tax in place, delay the plan off. It becomes more a discussion of what, and that leads back into the priorities that Mark did a great job of putting up there. What are the council's priorities? We'll make sure that the council priorities are inside the budget. And if those really reflect the council's priorities, we'll get those in the budget and then show that here's what it comes up, excess, short, wherever those, we'll let the numbers lie. It is different than what we've done in budgeting in the past, but it can be a very effective way. But it can also lead to a lot of hard discussions, because you're going to become similar to other legislative bodies where it's like, yep, your project did not get funded, it's delayed, or we're not going to raise taxes to cover this service. And those are fun discussions to have.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to add to just follow up with Curtis is saying. So the budget has so far been planned to expend funds, but in doing this, it'll be not only a plan to expend, but also to save funds. So if we're building in transfers into the budget document, we're also, creating a plan to save money essentially, which is what we haven't done in the past.
If I may, I'd just like to say this. This is wonderful. I appreciate the work you do, and we appreciate that. And I hope you don't feel that we don't trust you or anything like that. We're just doing our due diligence in asking these questions. And so thank you for trying to appease us. And I know that's hard, okay? So I appreciate all you're doing. I come from I like dashboards, okay? I like right in front of me, red versus green. Are we winning or losing? And is there any way that we can just come at the end of this and say, this is how much we need to fund everything. This is how much revenues we're going to have. We have a difference of minus $3 million. And, then all of a sudden to me this is all getting down to the brass tacks of where it's all going, but what's the final picture? And I don't know if that can be done, but that would sure help me a lot.
we've talked about this, about doing, the dashboard idea and everything like that. And I think there is a way that we can sort of pull that even with the Cassell information. We looked into that at one
And a
time.
dashboard that, like, when we come to these meetings, and if it was just a simple dashboard, we could look at that graph and say, oh, we're winning or we're losing.
There's a
Then-
lot of unknowns
Evident.
too, on
Then let's,
costs,
Well, that's part of the budgeting process.
yeah, and let's try to remove those
on
then.
roads and equipment and,
Yeah, but how can they be unknowns?
what you could have got a mile of road 3 years ago Are you gonna double it today or double it in 2 more years?
You got to have a
Per
plan.
expense.
Yeah, see, yeah.
Brett, one of the things I really like about splitting the presentation apart for governmental funds versus our enterprise funds, we can focus on what's the dashboard for the governmentals, because the enterprise funds have a little bit different hot buttons to them. But we can definitely work towards, yes, this fund is going in the right direction, or this fund's got some emergency things that we need to take a look at and try and build up some tools that go towards that point.
Okay.
And kind of simplify things out. It is a little bit like managing a conglomerate versus managing a single business. And the mayor and I had some different conversations about that and compared it to some different things. But, you know, some of the challenge here in the city is it feels like we're running about 6 to 7 different businesses. And one of those businesses is huge and it's like managing something that has about 15, 20 different departments to it that all have to balance out. And so we're not trying to complicate things with that. We are trying to simplify things, but it is a complicated entity. And we appreciate your patience as we're trying to figure that out. In answer to your number, I was projecting out, I think we'll probably come out somewhere between 2.7, 2.8 million if I was throwing my hat in the ring for this year. So the 23 number will probably go up by about 600,000
Yeah.
from where we're at.
Why don't we take a little short break for just a minute and come back, and then we'll go over the the agenda for tonight.
Hey, Mark, you give us what we wanted last time, give us what we want next time. Just stay at that computer and do this.
In the right direction.
Little hooligans want to start coming.
Tried
No,
really
no, no,
hard.
maybe I was Kiwanis. Where did
You were
I go?
Kiwanis.
I was Kiwanis, huh?
Yeah, but-
I haven't been to anything on the chamber.
Chamber's a different thing.
Okay,
You don't want to go on a trip.
let's see, Connie agreed to give us a prayer, and Rick will lead us in the pledge. Was there any questions or any comments or concerns about the minutes?
Thought it was great.
Betty? That discussion we had with the canal company and also with that engineer was, I thought was really helpful and sure helped me quite a bit.
Tons on here.
Financial statements or the warrant register, we good there? Okay. Let's see, how about, the JASM trucking, Sean, do you want to just kind of give us a little,
Is that the one on 2000?
It is
Yeah,
1,000.
yeah.
There's a subdivision, Val Stokes bought some property and subdivided it, and this front half is purchased by Jasmine Trucking. And they're, I think, currently developing the property. They're doing a little bit of phases, which is a previous development agreement. So they're gonna do all the site work,
I don't know if it's somebody that Val's working with, I think.
build,
I don't know him.
building.
Do you know who that is? Jason?
Yeah, I forgot his name though. I mean, he's not a local. He's someone that came up from the Wasatch Front to purchase and open up this business here.
What business is it?
It's a trucking.
Okay.
So beyond sort of this phased approach, there's nothing too unique about this. I think we captured some fee in lieu for some future public improvements that he's not able to do with the development of his site.
Well, and it is under they've started moving dirt over there, I think.
Yeah.
Resolution number 2313. Everybody needs to give out a little cheer right now. This is, I don't know if you remember several years ago, this rancher sold us we bought the farm. And so in order to get the water shares and everything, and then
Over by
and
Brigham.
then sold it back to him, yeah. And so he's paid for that in full. That's all taken care of now, so.
It's awesome.
Let's see, resolution number 2314. Okay, so Sean, maybe you and Mark can bring us up to speed on this, but this is a professional services agreement.
So, we talked about previously, and Councilman Seaman, asked about a consultant. And we were weighing both options, and frankly, there's pros and cons with each approach. The individual that we were talking to actually dropped out for the time being and just withdrew his name, although he would like to be considered in the future, if and when we open it up or when we feel like, we want to move to an employee on site. And so the way we're shoring up building permit inspections is through a contract service, which, I think the upside to this is it's going to better match the revenue to the expense. That's the downside with hiring an employee, because this is a variable revenue, as you know, and it's really all related to growth and development. And so is the workload, although we were going to use, if we had a full-time employee, we were going to get them engaged in doing maintenance and other building-related activities for our facilities. But that said, I think this is a great approach in the interim. It's a Beacon Consultants.
Is there a performance contract? I mean, they have to do it in so many days and that type of stuff?
There is. If you scroll down in the contract, you'll see they actually were hired and are doing the inspections for Garland right now.
And they
I
have
think-
great
I think we
reviews.
put in 3 days, so we're even hopefully gonna say, not hopefully, we wrote into the contract that you have to, the very last portion of this is the actual contract. This was the RFP we put out. I just kind of like to document everything that went into it. But I believe it's 3 days is my recollection.
And Garland has had rave review about these individuals. They've had good report.
And Steve has high regards for him.
Okay.
Bench.
So the other thing that we're doing to sort of help facilitate this is rely on that software solution that I mentioned, where builders will submit plans online, inspections will come online and be retrievable, by the builder on an account. So I think there's a lot of things that will come from this code consultant, but also just using some different software to make it easy. We'll actually take payments online too. And if they pay with that's 5 days as well. But if they pay with a credit card, they would pay that 3% fee. So can you see,
10 business day plans.
I think I think plan reviews 5 days.
Residential, 10 days for commercial,
And then
and 3 days for inspections.
10 days, is that acceptable in today's market?
well, for commercial.
Yeah.
Commercials are more complicated, and you get a fire marshal involved. But I feel like these are within the timeframes of the state code. I need to verify that, but I think that's sort of in part what we're based on it.
Yeah.
That's the upside, frankly, of having an in-house. We can, a little quicker turnaround, more
You're right.
readily accessed by, builders.
You can move when you need to move. Yeah, it's 10 days seems like a lot. It seems like 7 days was the mark anyway.
It seems to be fairly responsive, so I think you probably put it in the worst case scenario. We can just sort of watch and monitor how this arrangement goes, but all things considered, considering, the process we've come through to get to this point, I feel like this is a good solution when we didn't have a lot of.
Options, yeah.
So I'm pretty thrilled, and, if it's not, it doesn't work out like we hoped, then we can, I put 6 months in there that we can terminate the contract, but I also put in there that we can adjust it, kind of on a month-to-month basis. So I broke the contract out into 3 different distinct portions, of building, the customer service, sort of answering the phones, helping people, the inspections and the plan review, so we can even change that ratio of what we provide to them. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in the contract, so.
So just the two of them? The two guys?
I think there's 2 that they have.
And then an office assistant.
And a plan reviewer.
Yeah, or some, yeah. So it looked like they had contracts for a whole slug of cities.
Yeah, I know, and I'm a little concerned too.
That was the only thing I looked at and thought, wow. But
Yeah,
he'll hire more.
we'll have to see how it plays, but.
Sure.
Right now, it's a good time, frankly, to do it because we're making a change when there's not a lot of building permits being pulled. So we're hoping to get our software solution, everything sort of in place. And then again, like I said, if we need to ramp up, I feel like that individual that I was talking to, engaged in conversation with, I feel like he's still interested in something that out present time.
All right. How about bring us up to speed on where we're at with the River's Edge agreement, Sean?
So there's two things that are gonna be on, 3 things that are gonna be on your agenda in the near future. The first one is tonight, and it's the dedication agreement. If you scroll back, you might recall in the master development agreement, pre-annexation agreement, we negotiated the infrastructure that we needed to provide services, which required them to dedicate certain land to us. So Keep scrolling. Hopefully you see a picture. Oh, thanks. Keep going. So they're required to dedicate to us, as she's finding these, the park property, which is a park storm drain basin, and it totals 8 acres. Right there, if you scroll back. So, and zoom out, I think everyone's familiar with that. That's the 950 East. That's the one that Mark was talking about, that we're currently actually engaged Landmark Design to do some concept planning of the park storm drain basin, so then we can build up what that expense is going to be based on what's being programmed for that park. So that's 8 acres that they're dedicating to us. Scroll down to the next image and you're going to see, I think it's the property for the pump station, which is right against the East Canal, along what's a collector road into this project on the east side off SR 13. And then lastly, you're going to see easements and access from the pump station to the park. They stop short of dedicating to us in this agreement the actual right-of-way to get all the way over to Holmgren East and to Main Street, and that's going to come through the recording of the first phase, which they're telling me is going to occur in this calendar year. And we're actually meeting with them tomorrow to review their construction documents, but I think their construction documents are in order from my perspective and my review. So there is a clause in here that at any point, I shouldn't say any point, I can't remember, there's within a few months, if they don't do it, then we can provide them written requests for them to provide the rest of the dedication. Scroll up, Lindsay, if you would, to that first picture you showed.
Our stand was. Yeah. So we're, okay,
Keep going, no, the one that,
west of Sean Bush's house,
Okay.
just west of that.
that one. So this is a better context. So you can see where the park is, the storm drain basin is where that road goes out. So just go over where you see pump on that. Lindsay, can you circle that right in there? And you can see where phase 1 fits into that easement, hopefully.
Probably just below it.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and with this, they're going to dedicate the water shares, again, at no cost to the city. There was essentially 8 shares of water that's associated with the park and irrigating the park and storm drain basin.
And the associated, in phase 1, the associated water share is necessary for secondary water there.
Right. Yeah. So the other agreement just that you'll see coming up next, hopefully, is this agreement with UDOT. It's the phase development between UDOT, the city, and River's Edge, where we formalize the requirements for traffic lights and other improvements. And then lastly, you'll see the development agreement, which for this phase 1, which will come to you as well.
The stoplight on 950?
Right. So the way that UDOT wants to approach that is with each new phase, they want to see an updated traffic impact study and then see how it meets the warrants for traffic control or signals at that 950 East intersection.
Okay. Good. Let's see. Why don't we just, see here in the next few minutes. Bring us up to speed on the equalization basin, would you please?
Yes, so also on tonight's agenda, although I would probably suggest you table it. I've been working with the property owner. We have what I think is a good agreement. So their attorney, we provided a draft agreement. Their attorney added some language, and then Dustin and I reviewed that and provided comments back. And so that's where it stands right now. So it's possible that that they could come back and request some additional changes to the agreement that's in your packet. One change that I alerted them to is there's a water right, not a water share. So the water right is 1.45 acre feet, which is associated with developing a traditional house essentially on the property, because that's what this was originally slated for, and that was what was transferred in to the Craig Aston's, with his acquisition of the property, he received that water right, and I want to write that in. I think that water right is becoming more valuable because I think they've closed the basin for appropriation, so we want to make sure, while it doesn't do us a lot of good, I think we could sell that water right potentially, or exchange that water right for a water share in the Bear River Canal Company is what I'm hoping. So he knows that's part of the arrangement, but it needs to be written in to the agreement. But otherwise, I feel like we're fairly close, and I would expect at the next city council meeting, that'd be ready for you to adopt. I have the title report and working through all the exceptions and
So did you want to, you feel like we need to table this one for right now?
I think so. I talked to, Craig and I have been exchanging emails, and I think where it's at is he's going to have his attorney review. And so unless you're okay with adopting it and allowing city staff to finalize the actual finer points of the agreement, or if you want, you could table it and, we could bring it back.
But nothing will be done on that this year, right?
Well,
Now coming in, well, I
No.
guess we could do everything except the,
So it's going to correlate in part with River's Edge, because if River's Edge is developing, they're required to install the pump station and all the offsites to bring secondary water to their first phase. When they do that, we're required to have a equalization basin, as you know, according to the canal company.
how are we gonna put that in with the canal in?
Well, it's going to take them time to do, so we'll want to match our construction with their construction.
Yeah, they're not gonna turn water on this year, so we don't have to worry about it this year.
Hey, we went over the price of this, and I can't remember, I need to go back to my notes, but how much did he buy that for?
$450, and then he spent some in engineering.
I remember we went through all the numbers and,
Appraisal went at $488, and we negotiated, because if we were going through the eminent domain process, then there was cost there, and so we sort of settled on that amount.
$116,000 an acre.
It's amazing.
I paid that in Highland Park.
Yeah, in Island Park.
Highland Park.
We weren't expecting that. It was really anchored by what he paid for it.
Should have stayed in the banking business, Lyle.
no kidding. One more year. Okay, why don't we take a break for just a minute, and we'll start at 7 o'clock.
I'd be lending that kind of money out on that land.
At 7 o'clock, we'll go ahead and get started with our Tree Mountain City Council meeting. We want to welcome everybody here, all of you, and especially you young people. We're so grateful that you're here and so impressed by what you've accomplished, and what we're going to recognize you for it. So we will start off our meeting this evening with an opening prayer. Connie Archibald, our council member Connie Archibald, will offer that prayer. If any of you feel kind of uncomfortable with a prayer, you can step outside. Otherwise, Connie?
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to assemble as a city, so grateful to live here. We're grateful for those who care for us here, for police and for firemen and for public works, for our administrative team. We're so grateful for what they offer us. We are grateful for the moisture that we've received. We're thankful to enjoy safety in our city. We are thankful, Father, to have good neighbors and to be able to help and bless one another's lives. We ask Thee tonight that the Spirit might be here, that we might be able to celebrate the good. We're grateful for students that surround us in this room tonight that are good citizens who demonstrate citizenship in their lives and in their schools and within their families. We're grateful for the blessing they are to our city and to their families. We ask Thee, Father, to bless us with safety in our city. Help us to assume responsibility and to be good citizens in all that we do. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Connie. Rick?
Please stand. Maybe, if I can get out of here. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job. Thank you, Rick. We just want to kind of recognize some of our staff and police department and so forth. Over here we have Sean Warnke, our city manager, Wes Eastep, Councilmember Wes Eastep, Councilwoman Connie Archibald, Councilman Lyle Vance. Over here on my right, Councilman Brett Rhodey and Councilman Rick Siemens. Our recorder this evening, we've got Lindsay Nessen, Mark Christensen, our assistant managers around here somewhere. Chris Scotland back in the back, our interim fire chief. Dustin, let's see, we got Brian Crockett here with us this evening with the police department. Shari Euler who's our treasurer. Sarah Mormon, who is our Main Street manager. We are grateful that you're here with us this evening and appreciate all the efforts everything you do to make our city a better place. This first part of the month is one of our favorites. This is an opportunity for us to recognize elementary and intermediate school students who have kind of done extra. They outshined this during this last month, and in their efforts to be good citizens and to be the kind of people that we hope will grow up and be the leaders of our community in the future. These students are from McKinley, North Park, and Alice C. Harris Intermediate School. What we're going to do is we're going to present them with a certificate recognizing their efforts to be good citizens. And we also want to recognize and ask the principals of McKinley and North Park to come forward. Mark Taylor with McKinley School and Wendy Dunham with North Park School. So we'll go ahead and do these presentations now. And like I said, we do appreciate you coming out this evening. We hope that you this will be a good thing. So here we go.
The best part, Lyle, is you forgot to tell them that there's a really nice voucher in there to go get cookies.
Oh, yeah, that's the most important part.
Part to these kids is, besides the certificates, the cookie card.
Okay. Let's see, let's start the other direction here. Okay, Oliver Palmer, you here? What I'm gonna ask you to do is just come over here and stand with. Lindsay's gonna give you the best part of the evening.
Perfect.
Cabry Nelson.
Cabry.
What, here, we're gonna have you come right around. We're not gonna let you out of this. We're gonna let her out of this. William Stokes. Good job. Come around here. Come around. Marissa Sanders. Let's see, Maddox Walker. Here we go. Thanks. Ivy Stacy. Very good. Arlie Rico, is it Nava? Avery, let's see, Avery Walker.
Walker kids have been on that whole family.
Noah Geddes. London Thomas. Okay, Mary Jane Kyle. Emmon Walker. Avery Hawes. And Hunter Ritter. Did we get it? Did we miss anybody? Okay, good job. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Let's get a picture. Let's get a picture.
Yeah, I'll come back here and I'll stay back. How's that?
These students have been fantastic at being responsible, respectful, and safe. And we appreciate you as parents teaching them that. And so glad they're here tonight.
That'll work. You guys come over this way, okay?
Oh, okay. Okay, is that good? Okay, is this little girl? Okay,
Yes.
sure. Okay. good, good. Yeah, move her maybe up front a little bit so that she can be seen. Yeah.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Now, the rest of you guys can take pictures too. if you-
Oh, that's awesome.
Got some in the back there that,
That is so good.
that is way cool.
Thank you, everybody. We're quite done yet, sorry.
One, two, three, recess.
Thanks, everybody.
Good job.
Thank you. So great.
I would have never got that as a child. Would have you, Lyle?
She's got what?
She's got her administrative.
I don't
Yes, she does.
know.
She's got a master's degree.
Oh, yeah,
Your
she
daughter
did.
does.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was pre, what do you call it?
No, it's a master's degree in administration.
Well, make her a principal.
I know.
Thanks, you guys.
I'm totally in favor.
You're welcome to say, the fun is just getting started.
Talked about it. Some series.
Oh, it's so fun.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, council, is there any conflicts of interest with any of the agenda for tonight?
No, no.
All right. I wonder if we can get an approval for the agenda. We do need to consider the possibility of tabling item I, if that's your choice. Otherwise, we would need a motion for the approval of the
Okay.
agenda.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, that we approve the agenda as listed with tabling item number 8I.
Okay, it's been moved.
I'll
and we-
second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes for February 7th, 2023.
I'll make,
Any changes or anything we need to make there?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 7th.
I second it.
Moved by Rick and seconded by Lyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we kind of got things twisted around just a little bit. I got a little bit overzealous with the citizenship awards, but that's okay. Public comments. This is your opportunity to address the city council regarding your concerns or ideas. We ask that you, in presenting your information, that you're concise and we'll, if we need to talk about it, we'll talk about it.
Time limit?
Well, with you, okay, it's time to sit down. No, you go ahead.
All right. My name's Jack Stickney. I've been a resident since 2000, so 23 years. I guess it'll still be a few more before I'm actually a native, but been here a while. We moved in, we were one of the later move-ins to the Alice Harris subdivision when it was just finishing up. But over the years, I've made a few observations and have a couple of ideas that I might want to throw out to you tonight. So, first one has to do with, we have an oddball street in our city that's speed limit is 35 miles an hour. The street between AutoZone and Rocky Mountain Power, 400 east, or 400 west, 35 miles an hour. That seems a little strange to me since Main Street's 30 and 600 north is 25. And that road has gotten a little busier recently with the addition of all the Harris apartments and the new businesses down on the south end. So I would like to make a suggestion that we change the speed limit to on that road to match what a residential road should be, and that would be 25. Take it from 35 to 25. Unless you want to make 600 North 40, then go ahead and make 4th West 40 also. I doubt that's going to happen because of the school, and it does go through a residential area. So 600 North, I'm probably pretty certain is off the table, but 400 West, that might be an area that could be considered for a reduction of speed limit there. Another idea, I've got two more ideas that kind of go along with code enforcement. Now, a few years ago, I tangled with your new code enforcement person. When they started out, I posted some yard sale signs, and they got taken down before the yard sale happened. But I didn't realize, I guess, what the ordinance was, or the code was on, temporary signage. But I've noticed over the years that it seems like code enforcement may have kind of waned, that maybe some of the things aren't being looked at that could be. To maintain a municipality that has some organization to it, particularly I've noticed in the case of home occupation businesses. In my neighborhood, and I can give addresses offline if necessary. I don't want to do it publicly necessarily, but I've noticed some businesses, and my concern, because I've had a home business before, and I got a business license, and I paid the fee, and I registered my business name with the state, and filed the appropriate taxes, and did everything I was supposed to do. But I am concerned that there might be some home occupation businesses that might not be complying with the necessary regulations. And that's a concern in the sense that, parking can sometimes be a concern in a neighborhood. If enough parking isn't supplied for employees or customers. A concern with whether or not the business is complying with the health code, in the sense that if they serve food out of their garage, is that being in compliance with the health department? And I know that's not the purview of the city, but having them comply with the city code also goes along with them following through, I think, on the other aspects, for example, of the health, with the health department and getting the appropriate certificates to serve food out of their garage. So those are some concerns with code, and I believe code enforcement would be the department that would deal with that, would kind of follow up, make sure they're following the code and having their business registered correctly with the city. And another thing with code enforcement is also, it's parking code, I guess. Parking enforcement sometimes is pretty lax in our city. And I know that our law enforcement personnel have a lot more important things to deal with than parking. But it would
Talking
seem
winter parking, Jack?
general, all
General
year round.
parking, okay.
I know winter parking is obviously one with snow removal. But in that particular case, since you mentioned it, Wes, I don't know that people are being ticketed if they're on the street.
They have been, just so you know.
Okay, cool.
Some's been told.
Yeah, it's one of those things you don't hear about. But, for example, parking, I drive a school bus in the afternoon, along with my full-time job at the cereal plant. But I noticed that in driving my bus around, there are situations with parking that make it really challenging to safely conduct the bus on the city streets. And so, just as an example, close to corner parking, close to driveway, close to stop sign parking. There's a lot of that going on, especially around the schools. Parking on red curbs, parking where it's posted not to park. Just this afternoon, coming out of Meadow Park, I rounded a corner. There's a crossing guard there, and so they have cones set up. And as I made a westbound turn on 6th South, There's no there's a sidewalk and a curb there, and there's no parking signs along that side in front of those apartments, but there was a car parked right there as I was trying to negotiate that turn without driving over the cones that the crossing guard had set up. So just little things that, like that. Parking in an opposite orientation from legal, parking on the opposite side of the street kind of thing. That happens quite a bit too. So I think as our city continues to grow, it would be important for us to help people understand some of those laws better. And if it takes a small citation now and again to get their attention, that might be the right thing. And I don't know if it's the code enforcement person that does that or the police department has time to deal with it, but I would be happy to volunteer. I'm not quite retired yet, but give me a ticket book. I'll be happy to go around, spend a little time every week. But that's all I had. And do you have any questions for me?
Jack, how do we do this and be legal, Mayor? I'd like to find out with the businesses and get back with him.
Well, I can talk to you offline, I guess. I've
Yeah,
got,
maybe, just talk to us. And then
Maybe
we'll,
come down to the city office and just write down the businesses and put Jack and to Wes, and they'll get it to me, and then we can have them track, and then I can get back with you that maybe they do have one and you didn't know.
yeah, that's possible. I came in one time and asked them to look up one of the addresses, and they didn't have anything on file, so I don't think anything's been changed on that one, but I would be, I could be wrong.
Jack, just said, can anyone do a restaurant in their home?
There's a cottage kitchen or a home. The laws have recently changed, I believe. I guess is what I understood. But we can
stuff.
definitely look into it.
the bakeries, you can go ahead with an initial inspection, you can have a bakery, but as far as cooking things and things like that, it's a little more strict there.
Do you remember back when Arnold Eberhard had his park behind his house, and all those cars would park, and we stopped that because the traffic was causing too many problems, and so I think that's part of the issue here is we get too much traffic in an area, it becomes unsafe.
There you go.
I'll get back with you, Wes, or maybe a note here at the city office.
Thanks, Jack.
Okay.
Thanks, Jack.
Bet.
My name is Brad Jansen. I've lived here for almost 8 years now. A lot of you know me. I used to serve on the Planning Commission. As part of serving on the Planning Commission, I was on the Tremonton Integrated Land Use Plan Board. I don't know exactly what it would be called. And on August 26th, 2020, we received an email of a public engagement survey and some of the things that came from that. And I know that at least 3 people here received that same day because their name is on the email. But some of the things that came out of that I feel are being ignored is the number one thing. It says the preservation of Tremont's agricultural character and rural atmosphere is the primary area of concern for residents. The following specific issues were most common. People want to adjust zoning and land use to better plan and control new development, want to preserve natural and agricultural open space. Number 2, land use and housing. A lot of people said the pace and scale of new residential development is an area of concern, that limits need to be placed on new development, particularly multifamily housing, and there were specific concerns regarding the location and scale of multifamily developments. Regardless of their background, residents overwhelmingly identified Tremonton as an attractive place with an appealing small-town vibe. They expressed their love for the rural atmosphere, the agricultural setting, peaceful, quiet surroundings. With the question, why do you choose to live in Tremonton? What do you like most about living here? Number 1, by a long shot, is it's a small town. Number 2, peaceful, quiet. Question about how growth has been going. And small majority of people indicate growth has been handled poorly, with most concerns related to the pace of new development, particularly multifamily development. It says they want growth to be well-planned, utilizing more developed zoning and land use ordinances. Preservation of open space and agricultural land is desired. Many felt it had been handled poorly up to now. What would you like to see different? The number one answer, limit new growth. Then again, the scale and concentration of multifamily development was a common concern. To the question, are there housing needs that need to be filled in the city? The second and third most common response was limit new multifamily development, limit new residential development. They did a survey of different images and asked people to rate them. The bottom ranked 3 images portray higher density housing. And of all of the images, not just housing units, that it was the high density housing that was ranked lowest overall. For the visual preference survey results, the key findings with regards to development, single-family homes are significantly preferred over multifamily housing. Another thing that was part of the land use that we received as part of being on this group that was looking at this, had the Zion's land use takeaways, the expected land use needs for the next few decades. It said for 2020 to 2030, 170 multifamily units would be needed. 2030 to 2040, 330 units. 2040 to 2050, 470 units. In just 2020 and 2021, 374 multifamily units were approved. So more than what is needed for the decade. And that's not including River's Edge or anything like that. And so we're essentially getting close to 30 years of development in a few years. And as I read through this survey again and what the key concerns are of the citizens, I'm just wondering why we are allowing outside interests to determine how Tremonton is growing, rather than using what the citizens are actually concerned about. What at least three, well, most of you have known, but at least 3 of you since August 26th, 2020, over 2 years ago, you've known this is not something citizens want. And it is a concern, a big concern, the number one concern. And I would just like to say that I think a change needs to be done with this. There is a clear difference between what the citizens, who you're supposed to represent, are expecting and what is actually being done. So that is my statement.
Thanks, Brad.
Capri Austin, been a resident here for a long time. You guys know me. Just a couple concerns, kind of as Brad mentioned. So when I was doing the referendum to slow down the growth, to do the zoning, I had out of the the thousands of people that I met, just because they don't show up in this room doesn't mean that they don't have any kind of voice. I want you guys to know, just being out there and talking to people, that it is a big concern. And I would hope that you guys would have our best interest in mind and not change the culture here. This is why people move here. And I don't want to stop the growth, but I do want you guys to realize how much high density housing we have going on. I know that the police officers are going over to the Matheson apartments, not just for little things. There are some serious crimes going on over there. And that's changing our whole environment and our children's environment. We want our kids to be able to grow up here, and it's changing that. It's a big concern. And just because the people don't show up here doesn't mean that they're not talking about it. And I know if you guys went out there, and I know you have gone out there and talked to people, it's a concern. Another thing that I would recommend, Sean, I think your contract was just reinstated to go another term. Why do we not have our city planner living inside the city limits? Our chief of police does, our fire chief did. Why is not the individual that is making all these calls and providing you guys this information and selling you on this? Sean, why aren't you living here? Why aren't you dealing with the traffic? Why aren't you supporting Kent's and all these small businesses trying to find parking on Main Street to shop at a local store that is on the brinks of going out of business because they don't have parking for their customers? Just something to think about.
Thank you, Capri. I'm gonna be nice, Lyle.
Mike Lander, I've been here for 2.5 years now. I live here, but I don't shop here. Number one, I want to thank the chief, the acting chief, and the PD. They've been busier than a hornet's nest, and the road department. Good job, you're keeping the roads clean. My question is, the Main Street, who's responsible for digging out after UDOT plows it? Because you can't get into any of those businesses. I tried and almost fell on my face, which is in violation of the American with Disabilities Act. Who's in charge of digging that out? Is it the business? If so, tell them. Think they'll do it. But we're just starting to develop. I've heard these two people complain about it. Northrop Grumman has gone from an R&D to a full-fledged production development. When Martin Thiokol was in full production, what was the population growth when Thiokol first popped in here?
2,500 maybe, in the early 60s.
Okay.
2000.
And that's and they're now starting to develop solid rocket boosters and other Department of Defense projects. They're now building them. They need people to live in here, but people live here, but they're not buying things here. Sean, you're doing a great job so far. You last week about all this grass, the state is asking us to become like a desert because we are a desert environment. So why don't we adopt the state policy of less grass and more desert in a environment? Since the state's paying people from Ogden South to actually take up their grass and put desert environments in. But this town's growing. Okay, you're going to have growing pains. Okay, wait till June and July when the fire chief and the police chief asked for more officers. And I was here last time and they were complaining about it. Okay. My part-time job is I work for the University of a Utah Trauma Unit. Trust me, you ain't seen nothing. You go in the Salt Lake Valley or you go out in the other sides of the areas in Davis County. My little town of Syracuse, you can't even tell it anymore. So it's growing pains. The city's going to grow. So that's it.
Thank you.
And I was being nice.
Thanks. Yeah, you were. Thank you.
I'm Jamie Poppleton. I haven't been here for several years because honestly, I feel like it doesn't matter. I'm small town. I've been here for 44 years or longer. I go to the grocery store, I don't know anybody. I go to places, I don't see familiar faces. All I see is a bunch of people running around talking and complaining about what everybody, I think, is trying to say. There's no place to park. Shopping here is ridiculous, but there's all these people moving in here, and there's absolutely nothing for them to do except for complain about this, complain about that, which you guys, in watching people talk, I feel like you're looking around, you're looking at the TV, you're really, in my opinion, and others that I have talked to, think coming here anymore and filling these seats doesn't matter. This is a farming community. People sell off their stuff because they are forced out. They're pushed out. It's not going to be long before my family's farms are gone. And there's absolutely nothing anybody can do about it. There are roads right now through our fields on the master plan. Carolyn Freeman, I don't know if you remember her, is fit to be tied because of this development. It is taking roads that people use. All I ask is, before all this growth, and the numbers are there, stop and think about where you came from. Stop and think about how long you've lived here, and whether or not this place is gonna look like Park City, or look like Ogden, or bring the crime. You wanna raise your families here? Raise them here. But next time you go to the store, stop somebody and ask them. Say, hey, I'm so-and-so. Why don't you come to the city council meetings? See what they tell you. And as for the city manager, I totally agree with everybody else. Is Brigham developing and growing as large as Tremonton? Can you answer that question?
What's the question?
Is Brigham City growing leaps and bounds like Tremonton is?
No, I think they're behind as far as recent growth.
So why is everybody coming here and not Brigham?
I don't know.
Is it because you don't want it where you live?
I don't have
Thank
anything
you.
to do with the city, except I live there.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your comments, and I have been keeping notes. And we are glad to talk to any of you. So I am, and I know I am. All right. Let's see here. New council business, discussion and consideration of approving the January 2023 financial statements. Council, do you have any questions on that? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve this evening the January 2023 financial statement.
Moved by
second.
Connie and seconded by Rick. All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion and consideration of approving the January 2023 warrant register. Council, any questions on that?
I'll make a motion that we approve the warrant register.
I'll second that.
Moved by Lyle Vance and seconded by Connie. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-11, ratifying the JASM Trucking Subdivision and Site Development Agreement. We've gone through this in our work session, but Sean, can you bring us up to speed one more time on this?
With each development, we have a development agreement that's approved that formalizes the conditions of approval, and that's what's on here tonight. It's already been recorded, so you're just ratifying the agreement. It's for a trucking operation on 2000 West.
Does that take up half that lot? Is there still 50% of that left for
It-
development,
It is on the back half.
the back half?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
east? No, there's,
so there was a subdivision, I can't remember the total acres, but the first parcel is being developed in this trucking. which has the frontage on 2000 West. Val Stokes owns the back half of that property.
So it's half. Okay.
Any other questions?
I think that'll fit in there pretty good. I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 23-11.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Lyle Vance and seconded by Wes. Roll call. Let's see, Rick?
Rick, aye.
Brett, aye.
Lyle?
What? Are you saying yes or nay?
Yay. Lyle Vance, yay.
Connie
Yes.
Archibald, aye.
Wes, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody.
When you,
Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-12, appointing Carrie Hunsaker to serve as the Tremont City Food Pantry.
Speech.
Carrie,
Speech.
there you are. Council?
Thank you for all you've done.
Both of you.
So good. So grateful for what you've done for our city.
Yeah, he was highly commended from your cohort there next to you. We're really gonna miss her, but we're looking forward. You got big shoes to fill, but we feel like you're gonna do it, so. I got Kathy's other phone number if you need to call for questions.
You're going to follow that up with a motion?
I'll make the motion that we adopt resolution 23-12.
I'll second.
Been moved by Wes and seconded by Rick. Roll call, Wes?
Wes, aye.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Vance, aye.
Brett, aye.
Rick, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-13, acknowledging the recording of the full reconveyance in favor of Vince Rogers. Just a minute, I just lost it. Oh, sorry about that, I just lost it. Vince Rogers associated with a trust deed and promissory note between Tremonton City and Vince Rogers for Vince Rogers to purchase 207 acres of real property. For those in attendance here, Sean, can you just kind of briefly give us a rundown on what we did there?
We celebrate.
Yeah, when we were constructing Service Area 3, we were in the market to purchase water shares, and we needed a large sum of water shares, and we found a willing buyer or seller of property and shares, but we just needed the shares, but they were offered up jointly. So we at the same time, we entered into negotiation with a rancher who actually wanted the land, and he was just going to use it for grazing. And so we purchased the property, held on to the water shares, 111 acre, or 111 water shares, and then sold the property. The terms of that sale to the rancher is that he would pay over time. I think he had 4 years to pay in full, and he has paid in full. The property was secured with a trust deed, and so this recording of this document essentially withdraws our interest in that property and fully conveys it to Mr. Vince Rogers.
And that, we were just talking about it, it seems like we got those shares for a reasonable price at the time. And Vince, of course, is paid in full plus interest.
Right.
We've released the land now, and we do have the shares, what was it, 100 and something shares or 111 shares or something like that?
Yep.
Seems like. Okay. Let's see. Okay. We'll take a motion on this if you're okay with it.
Paid in full. I'll make the motion that we adopt resolution 23-13.
I'll second.
Been moved by Wes and seconded by Rick. Let's see, roll call. So Rick?
Rick, aye.
Brett, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Wes, aye.
Motion passes. Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-14, approving a professional services agreement with Beacon Code Consultants to provide building inspection and plan review services for the city. Sean, can you maybe just give us a brief update on that one?
With Steve's retirement, we recruited and opened a position to fill, and we could not fill it with someone who was qualified as an employee. At some point, we went out and asked for requests for proposals, and we did receive several requests. This was the most conducive for the city, which is with Beacon Code Consultants, and they'll essentially provide inspection services and plan review services along with customer service. So we would recommend that you approve this professional service agreement with them.
Council?
I'll make a motion that we approve this evening resolution number 23-14.
Moved by Connie. I'll second it. And seconded by Brett. Roll call, let's see, I forgot now, Wes?
West Eye.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Brett, aye.
Rick, aye.
Motion passes. Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 2315, approving the River's Edge dedication agreement between River's Edge Real Holdings LLC and Tremonton City for the city's receipt of real property, water shares, and easements. Sean?
Yeah, this was a part of the pre-annexation agreement and master development agreement where they would dedicate to the city some of the land and water shares that we needed to provide services. And so this is a dedication agreement that fulfills in part that requirement. There's still a few things for them to do relative to providing infrastructure for so that the city can provide services. I would also tell you that we need to have the engineer check one issue relative to one of the legal descriptions, just to make sure that is, it's correct. But otherwise, it's ready to go. So if you would approve it, we'll make sure that the actual recordation of these legal descriptions are correct and fully satisfy the requirements.
Any questions, council? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 23-15, approving the River's Edge dedication agreement.
I'll second.
And moved by Connie Archibald and seconded by Rick Siemens. Rick?
Rick, aye.
Brett, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Connie Archibald, aye.
West Eye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-16, selecting Maureen L. Bachman as the lead acquisition agent for the 1000 North widening project from 2300 West to 2650 West in Tremonton. This is the one up on the hill, going up on the hill on Radio Hill.
Yes.
John?
Yeah, this has, this road project that we're undertaking requires that we coordinate with the adjoining property owners, the residents themselves, and acquire easements. So as there's quite a bit of topography on 1000 North, at least in this section from 23 to 2650. And so as we widen the road, it's going to push the right-of-way and the improvements out further into in proximity to these residents' home. And so we'll need to get cut and fill easements, potentially, or temporary construction easements as we construct the road. And so this individual, this lead acquisition agent, would perform those services. They would coordinate all the other professional services, which would include an appraiser. They'll work with the engineer to finalize the legal descriptions, and ultimately they'll work with the property owners to acquire the easements that we need in order that we can construct the road. So the plan is to acquire those easements this year and be ready and in position to construct the following year. So we'll try to bid probably about this time next year, the road project, or in January, and then construct in the summer of 2024.
So do they have a time on it? Is there a, if we want all that to be done and cut and dried so that we can put it out for bid, is there a time thing on this?
So I don't have a contract, and that's one of the things that I didn't do. So I used UDOT's pre-qualified pool for professional services. So these are individuals that have been screened and met UDOT's requirements. So that's one thing we could do, is to actually create a contract that states that. I've talked to her, and she knows the timeline. At some point, if we're not able to acquire those easements, it would put you in a position to consider, do we need to go through the legal process to acquire those easements? And I guess that's, after, good faith negotiations and coordination with the property owner. And my understanding is that most property owners, want this improvement. And so I don't necessarily anticipate that as the outcome, but that's probably what would happen if we don't, if they're not responsive. And there's, in any project, there could be a certain segment that, that aren't as open to it, and we'll just have to see who those are and try to work through it with them. But they feel like there's more than enough time to acquire those, but we do need to keep the project moving along because time flies.
How does she get compensated?
It's $2,000. I think it's $2,000 per property. There's 12 properties, I believe. If you scroll down, I think there's there you can see.
Well, property owners impacted.
But you can see the scope of impact. So I did go out and bid. I did receive bids based on, those individuals that were in UDOT's pool. I sent out emails, requesting that they provide bids. And she was the lowest bid to provide the service, but highly recommended.
These properties that, where maybe the access, the entrances have been, we repair that entrance back to the, so that's fully, they're made whole.
They are. There's a few driveways that are steep now.
Yeah.
And, part of what we're trying to do, and the reason why the legal descriptions aren't completely satisfied or completely finalized, I should say, is because we want to work with the property owners to talk to them about what their different options are and how they would like to see their driveway configured. But that's primarily the biggest issue, is going to be, their drive approaches and how they tie into the new road.
There's no future, I don't know, if somebody want to build a couple of houses down off the hill or something, our road will match, or they'll have to match if they want to build off that hill a little, like to the south.
Yeah, so we adopted an ordinance, several years ago, and it's worked on several properties. A lot of 1000 North was already developed, but essentially it required an overlay and pushed people back further. And so, to your point, development that occurs after, they're going to have to tie into the road. And even within the last few years, we've tried to make it easier for people, to tie in. The hard part is when they build really close to the road and there's just not that distance, to change the grade. But with a greater setback, it lessens the impact that the property owner realizes, when the road's expanded.
So we're staying within Tremont City's right of way for the road. We're just compensating the people who have built their houses at different levels to that street, and we're gonna pay for that. That's
Right.
what we're saying here.
Mm-hmm.
Good with it.
But Like a can of,
But we've had so many here begging for this to be done. And wanting it for safety reasons.
Yeah.
It's a safety deal and it's a front end deal
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
road's had it.
That road
I'll
is
make the
awful.
motion. Lyle, Mayor.
All right, okay.
We adopt resolution 23-16.
I'll second it.
Been moved by, motion by Wes and seconded by Brett. Let's see, Wes, it's your turn.
Wes, aye.
Connie Archibald, aye.
well, Lance, I,
Brett, aye.
Rick, I.
Motion passes. Well, this is a project that is sorely needed in that area, and unfortunately, this is, to make the road what it needs to be, we need to widen it, and I just hope we don't have tons of issues with those 12 residents.
That was a county road when I was a kid. They should have made it better, wider back then.
Way back in the day. I remember when it was a dirt road. A gravel road, I mean.
yeah.
Okay, let's see, looks like item number I, we're going to table for right now, so we'll move on to the calendar items and a review of any unfinished action items. Calendar-wise, I think we've got, there's Steve.
Yeah, I got mine on my calendar.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Not right, he's my age.
He's your age? You went to
He's
school?
my age,
Wow.
couple of months younger.
Wow.
35 years.
It's going to be hard. We're losing all these great people.
Yeah.
That's going to be a hard one.
It is going to be hard.
We have the League of Cities and Towns coming up. Let's see, who plans to attend that this year? Wes and Connie,
I do.
Lyle.
you're planning to go, Lyle? Okay, I'll go.
No.
You two are off on gallivanting, aren't you? Yeah. Okay.
Steve,
2 to 4.
O'clock, wasn't it?
2 to 4
on the 15th,
on
right?
the 15th.
I'm
Yep.
trying to keep up with Lyle.
2 to 4.
Keep up with the
advances.
And then I think there's
He
a
didn't
dinner
hear.
that night. Is that right?
Just treats, isn't it?
So we're trying to keep up with advances.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday.
Okay, we got that down, everybody? We want to make sure we give Steve a good send-off and how much we appreciate 35 years of service. That's significant.
Aye.
So we sure do appreciate Steve and everything he's done for our city. Let's see, in the League of Cities and Towns, I think we know who's going down to that.
I was going to just say, this is a little different. This is the Your Land,
This is not
Your
the League
Way.
of Cities and Towns here.
Well, it is. It's a city sponsor or a league sponsored activity or training, and it's put on by Zions Bank. I don't know if you remember, but the last conference we went to, they talked about this program where Zions is getting involved, and it's trying to help cities use their assets, their land primarily, and try to figure out how to maximize that. And so, if you're interested in participating, it's March 14th from 9 to 3.
Brigham City. Close.
I think you're supposed to register, so if you want to let me know, then I can go through them.
Okay. Okay.
Who's going to be in attendance to that meeting? I mean, just Tremonton, or is Brigham going to be there?
No, it's kind of a regional training, I believe. I would anticipate.
Logan then? Logan's going to be there?
I'm not.
They had a kickoff meeting here at the treatment plant, and there were some people from Logan and here and Brigham, so I think it's kind of.
Oh, so it's adding on to what that one down at the treatment plant was? Okay. All right.
Should we attend?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't, they were looking for input on the first one. I don't know if they've taken that input and have created some sort of plan to help us.
You're not gonna be on a cruise ship or nothing?
They're recommending it.
Yeah.
Going to South America, continent, or
Antarctica.
Antarctica?
Okay.
Well, that same night, that same day, we've got, I've got Planning Commission, House City Council meeting that night. So there's lots of things going on, so I don't know. I know I probably won't, just because of everything I've got going on that day.
I work, so.
Wanna go loud?
I'm thinking about it. You have to know?
No, and I'm sure they won't turn you away. They provide lunch, so they're probably just trying to get a count for lunch.
I would imagine.
I'm like 50% at this point. I gotta
Just text me.
go home and ask the boss.
Should be glad to get rid of you.
I know, I should probably pay money to have me go.
Pays in quarters, huh?
Whatever. It's getting a little deep here now, so. All right. Let's see, mid-year conference coming up on the 19th to the 21st.
Same as last year, reservation things.
Just
I
let,
got them at your hotel.
Oh,
Cause I think everyone was at a different one except for you. It's that My Place.
Yes.
whatever.
that's a good one.
Was it good?
A little farther walk, but it's a good one.
So I've got you
Okay,
reserved there.
thank
and
you.
you're registered.
Just down the street.
Yeah, I remember.
where I'm ready. Okay,
You're all gonna be at My Place. I'll get you, with your per diem checks, I'll get you a map.
okay, all right, all right. Let's see.
Dinner with Brigham City that night like we normally do.
I think we went to a restaurant when we were down for the rural water thing. Holy cow, this engineering firm was whining and dining, I guess, Carl or whatever, I don't know what, we got to tag along. But it was one of those kind of places where they bring you out, like get all these different. It was
Just saying, it's up to you to have
highbrow for me,
reservations.
but, what?
It's up to you to get the reservations
I
for us
know,
at Brigham's.
I know. Any suggestions?
I liked where we went last year,
Hey,
but
Yeah, it was close.
Was it Sizzler?
no,
We went,
chop pork.
that pork plate, yeah.
It was really close to where we were staying.
Yeah, that was pretty good. All right, just something different.
No matter.
You don't want to go to the highbrow place, huh?
I'd go anywhere, Lyle.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we got that down. What else have we got going on? That's all? Okay. Any, can't spit it out. Any unfinished business we need to address at this point? Branding implementation, budget. Mark, can you just take a minute or two and just update us on all the things that we've been able to do? By the way, look at our new flag over here. We need to open that up so we can see it.
Up there.
So we made a couple of adjustments here at the city office, mostly in this room, with the sign and the mission and vision statement, the flag. Mayor's gonna have a new plaque made in front of his place right there. Also some rugs. I learned a lesson, don't do white rugs.
Where the
dark
Public
color
Works
rug.
walks into that all the
Yeah,
time.
especially
Hey, that
with
was
Public
me
Works.
that day.
But one thing, they came up with strategies in our playbook, and our social media manager, Sarah, she's been trying to implement those strategies. There's like local business buzz and a resident question and answer, and she's been trying to add those into the schedule on the social media. I thought that's been a good implementation of the branding. Our monthly newsletter now looks like our brand, and the mayor puts on his monthly message with that. We've worked with them on new projects, the wayfinding signs, and the animal shelter logo was an add-on, so we have some street banners that will be going up, some other street flags that will be going up, and we're trying to push it out as much as we can. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate, I think this has been a really successful program here, and, well, two of you with shirts. I didn't wear mine, but
Oh, if you want T-shirts, stop by my office afterwards, and we can grab some T-shirts
what you
too.
wanted.
Hats. You got some good,
I got some hats too.
hats are good looking too.
And beanies for this cold weather.
Thanks, Mark. Let's see. update on the integrated land use plan and transportation traffic model update proposal. Do we need to kind of walk through that a little bit?
I'll just do it briefly. As Brad mentioned, the city's been working on a land use plan. It's been a long time coming. We stopped in the middle of that plan to address the affordable housing mandate that the state had for us, where we had a strict timeline in order to adopt. And so here recently, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the land use plan. And so the next step is, based upon the land use plan, is to look at our traffic model. So land use and transportation corridors are uniquely connected, and so as we change the land use plan, the concept here is that we'll go back and revisit the model based upon what those proposed land uses are, and see how the model performs, see if it evaluates what it evaluates, and if it identifies areas that we need to reconcile, either changing the transportation or changing the land use to better match. So that's one of the things that they've been working on, is actually looking at the land use plan and then estimating, what that looks like for ERUs. And that effort was going to be really helpful too, as we start to plan out our infrastructure so that we size lines correctly. And so anyways, the scope of work is about $8,000 to have them update the transportation plan. So I just wanted to let you know, where we were at and move forward. I think it would be about 4 to 6 weeks that it'll take them to update the model. And then based upon that, it would be on your agenda for approval. So it's at Planning Commission right now as we finalize this element of that. So unless you have questions or concerns, or you don't want to go to that extent, but we think it's money well spent, just to make sure from a modeling perspective that the two reconcile and they function together.
So you're going to have all your intersections that you've already identified in this plan, and that road that goes out past the freeway. Is all of that going to be part of this?
So they looked at our network. We have a transportation plan that identified our road network. It's a high-level modeling, so it doesn't necessarily get down to level of service at intersections per se, unless they can see through the modeling that there's an area of concern, and then they can try to go down to the next level. And just for everyone's understanding, traffic is increasing as more people are coming in, and the level of service is changing. But level of service with traffic is a lot different. I mean, you're gonna see more volume, on the streets, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not meeting an acceptable level of service. So that's what this will help us do, is project the level of services, see where there's, if we need to amend the land use plan or amend our transportation plan, either one to sort of match and make sure that it functions as well as it should, within these acceptable levels of service. So I don't know if I answered your question. It's not going to be analyzing every intersection. It's going to give just a high level view, and unless we see something that we really need to work on.
The real question in my mind is, what are we getting for $8,000?
We're checking our assumptions and our land uses to make sure that the corridors are sized sufficiently, primarily. So when you undersize a corridor, and you have more and you need to widen it, that becomes real expensive, especially if it's built out and developed. So I think that's, primarily what you're going to see. As I mentioned, we might see some areas of concern and then try to go down to the next level of modeling. And I think also to let, individuals in the city know that we do take planning serious, and that we're taking, reasonable steps to look at these issues that they're bringing to our attention, land use and transportation. So I think those are what you get from it. It's been 5 years since we did our transportation plan, and that what you're purchasing here with this 8,000 is, I talked to try to understand, like, if we wanted to update our plan, how much more is it? And he feels like it, we're paying essentially for half of the plan to be updated or less, because they wrote all the narrative. This would just be checking the assumptions. So this could be a springboard, if we want to update our transportation plan. And, 5 years it's getting time, to consider that, especially with growth. So I feel like there's value for going through this exercise. But I also wanted to bring it to your attention too, to let you know where the plan is at, the status, what we're doing, and ultimately, if you don't want to do it, then obviously we would just bring the plan forward.
Would that planner help with these kind of things in the future?
Well, it really, no.
Should he not make them right?
So we need professionals to help us, with this level of planning and engineering. This is a model that they use, that software that's really specialized, that helps cities. So I think we're always going to need consultants. I think the planner, depending upon their skill set, might be able to do some planning. Like, for example, Mike, mentioned the next plan that I think we budgeted actually for, that we need to do and undertake, is a water plan. I'm not sure that the planner that we have in-house will have the skill set to do it, and he might be frankly overwhelmed with just doing the day-to-day operations to do that type of planning. We also might, and when we do that plan, that's when we're going to do the landscape ordinance that you've requested. So it'll be a two-step, project. So there are a lot of things that the planner can do, but I do think we're going to still need to, contract out some of the plans. The other thing I was going to mention is, once we have the land use plan in place, then we're going to need to look at our ordinances and see what we need to do to amend. And again, depending upon their skill set or their work level, we still might rely on a consultant to help us align our land use plan with our ordinances. So,
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so I was gonna move forward unless unless you don't want me to.
I'm good.
I am too.
Of my pay grade. Smart grade.
Well, even hearing some of the comments here, I think that this is important, that we show, that especially our corridors and that kind of thing, or I don't know what we're ever going to be able to do about Main Street, but some of the other corridors and everything, I think it's going to be important to get that planning done.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's see.
Fire chief.
Fire chief's gone.
Yeah,
There.
No, he's there.
Oh, he's behind Mike. I'm sorry, Mike, you were blocking blocking Chris out. Okay. Why do we kind of walk through the recruitment process here and see, so everybody knows kind of where we're at on
If you
this?
could go to the calendar, I think that's the easiest way to summarize. So we did, so January 3rd, we reviewed the applications, and when I say we had Sean Jensen and the fire chief, Lindsay and I looked at them. We screened out, or we identified the strongest applicants based upon experience and other factors of the job requirement. We sent out invitations for them to submit essay questions. Those essay questions are due on the 13th. And we will create another interviewing panel for the first round of interviews, which I would anticipate would be the same as we did last round, which would, I think we had Wes participate and we had Lyle participate. So that would be on March 24th that we would do those. We have quite a few out-of-state applicants and one in-house or in-state. And so most of them, I think, will be through Zoom for this first round of interviews. After the first round, we'll identify the strongest candidates
How
and
many
invite
will
them
it
back.
be? Yeah, there'll be 5.
Five.
At 5, 3 in RSA so far.
Yeah.
Just be easier if Chris said yes. This would all go away, Chris.
Yeah.
So would you and your wife, I'm sure, so. Just a thought.
Okay.
So we'll keep you posted. I would expect then maybe in April, maybe the first meeting, I don't know. We'll figure out the schedule, but at some point they'll be on your agenda for interviews.
All right. Let's see, department reports, Chief Crockett?
I just got 2 things.
Wow, they were busy last week.
We sold the ambulance.
Yes,
for
yes.
$13,600.
Yes.
What was the 1,200 something fee on there?
I don't know about that.
It's for gov deals, but it's on top of the purchase price. So
Yeah.
if you're bidding for it, you're saying what you're gonna pay the organization. And then it's a 15% fee to gov deals who hosts the site and gets all the bidders and all that.
So we're pretty happy about
Done
that.
well.
It doubled in the last 24 hours, the bids.
Wow.
So somebody has plans for it.
Oh, a couple from Boise bought it, and they're going to turn it into a camper, and they're going to live their lifelong dream of living in a van by the river.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be another Boise State bus.
They could. They'll probably paint it like a Smurf, but. And then the other thing I wanted to, you guys all heard about the Dylan Rounds case being, they got a suspect and they're prosecuting him. The turning point in that case was, involved one of our officers. Josh Curl is on the scuba team, and he's the diver that actually found that phone in the loose end pond. And that blew the whole case wide open. So anyway, we just wanted to say he did a good job, and he's in the military right now. He's going to officer candidate school. He has no idea that they've even.
You can't stay in touch when he's in there?
Nope, he's for a month. He's off grid. So anyway, we just wanted to say a good attaboy for him. So that's all I got.
Good for
Thank
you
you.
guys. Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely.
Oh, Chris, have you got anything for us?
Just a couple things real quick. I think I shared some of this with Sean. So West Liberty Foods, was it last week, came and presented us with a donation check. I think it was for like $3,600. So no, we're just super grateful for them. They actually did an internal raffle where their employees actually put in money, and then the intent was to donate that money to the fire department for supplies, equipment, whatever. So we received that last week, and then we received notification this week that Rocky Mountain Power is going to donate $4,000 as well to the department. So super appreciative of them and their support for us. So other than that, I don't really have anything else. So
Thank you.
I really appreciate the reports I get. And talk about busy. I mean, I looked at what the police department did, and I could say the same for the fire department, but the police, I was just, my chin dropped to the ground when I saw all that had happened in Tremont. And I just said, well, I think I responded and said, wow, what a week.
Yeah, it was.
It was a week.
I'm not on that list, John. I don't get that. until
Yeah, maybe
somebody-
Brian, you could send it out directly to the council.
Sending it to everybody.
Yeah.
I just,
And you might need to get personal, because we're still working on the email, and maybe we could, we essentially implemented two-factor authentication, which I think created some havoc for your city accounts. Is that true? Can you guys access your city accounts?
I get it through my Gmail, but.
I don't look at it, so.
But Brett has
Oh,
So send it to your personal account? Okay.
I'll need those then.
I can send those off to Brian.
I just,
Okay.
it was amazing.
Julie, do you want to tell us about the animal shelter? It's pretty active.
All right. So I'll go over just our our February intakes and outcomes. So we had 11 intakes that came into the shelter, 2 that were returned to their owners, 4 that I was able to send to rescues, 1 that was adopted out. Sadly, we had 1 that had to be euthanized. Was sad, but it had to be. And then at the end of the month, at the end of February, we had 3 that were in foster homes and 7 that were in the shelter then. So those numbers have actually gotten better since then. But I did want to let the council know, I know that there's been a lot of talk, including me complaining about our animal control officer and, and all the animals at large and all the barking dogs and all the things. And I just have to say, like, I've truly been humbled having this opportunity to have this position. I was quite honestly really worried that there would be pushback from working with Officer Horsepool, and it has been the exact opposite. He has been amazing to work with. He has been so cooperative, and I feel like we're really making some really, really positive changes over there. One of the things that I know has been an issue has been that the county has been bringing animals in, dogs specifically, into our shelter. And that's something that I put a stop to. And I just told them they can't anymore. They just can't bring them in anymore. The problem is that they all have keys. So you come in the morning and there's just dogs there. The one that had to be euthanized wasn't even a Tremonton or Garland dog. It came in from the county. It was a Northrop employee, called it in, and I show up and there's a dying dog in the Tremonton shelter that no one even bothered to tell me about. So there's really some issues. I don't know how he has done this job. I don't know how. And I apologize to him every single day for complaining about him. I honestly do. So the county has been notified that we are no longer taking their animals, that they can push for a county shelter if they want services. We have the option of asking the county to pay us for animals that come in, and that will happen for especially that dog that came in, because I personally paid the vet bill to be able to euthanize that dog. Sorry. So that won't happen anymore. The county won't be putting that on our residents anymore. Our taxpayers are paying for services in Tremont and Garland, and that's it. And we've drawn the line. They won't be coming in anymore. I'm getting locks changed so that we don't have them coming into the shelter when no one's there. There was something else I was going to talk about with that. So there's been other complaints about the code enforcement aspect of it, and I can tell you that Greg is all day, every day, working on code. I hear him on the phones every day, all day. He's really trying to get caught up on things, and I just want to commend him on what he's trying to do over there. It's like 5 full-time jobs. So, anyway.
All right.
Thank you.
Did I see you got a total of $7,000 in donations?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're getting our doggy play yard. We've got a shed that has been built that we are waiting for the snow to be cleared so we can have it delivered. It's a huge 10 by 20 shed, so we can actually have space to store supplies and food to actually be able to feed animals. And then once the ground thaws, we'll have a concrete pad poured that shed will be moved onto, and then we'll have a small area that my husband and his brother are going to fence in for us so that we can have a little dog yard for them to be able to go out and, just have some enrichment while they're there. Because right now, we can't even take animals out. Because of the way the state laws work, if the animals are on their stray hold, we can't even take them out of the building. So because we aren't fenced in, because the way the shelter sits, I'd also encourage you all to come to the shelter if you've never been there, because I had never been there, and you ought to come visit it, and see what we're working with. So because the shelter sits on one side of the lot and it's not fenced in, we can't take someone else's property outside of those doors unless it's going to be returned to the owner. So it's sad. These animals are just in jail, and it's just sad. So I don't know, hopefully at some point we can talk about a standalone shelter to where we can have it a fenced-in space so that animals aren't going through that. But we're trying to do the best with what we have down there and trying to make it as positive as possible. We had just today, I was animal control today because Greg was gone. And my trusty volunteer over here helped me round up dogs from all over town today. And we got 2 of them back home. So, and the other thing I was going to say is that the other issue has been that and I know there have been some complaints about this, is that they haven't been collecting the fines. They haven't been penalizing people for their dogs at large. And so that's something that even today, if they were back home within 2 hours, we still made them stop at the PD, pay their pound fee, and then they can come pick up their animal because they're still using city resources. They're taking up our time, they're taking up our resources, and they're gonna have to pay for it until people figure out to keep their dogs contained. I've lived here 5 years. I have my own dogs. They have never been at large. So, I'm not Wonder Woman. I'm not doing anything special, but people just don't seem to care. So if they don't care, they're gonna have to pay to not care.
How
So
much is bail on a dog that you've had for, is it by the day or?
so if it's a first time offense, we just raised all the prices. I'm trying to make all of our rates equal with Brigham City so that people aren't trying to cheat the system by choosing which city to go to, like, oh, well, if I take it over here, it's less expensive kind of thing. So I'm trying to, I've been working with their animal control officer to make sure that our fees and our adoptions and all of that are in line with theirs. And so the first time offense is $45. That went up from $25. And then it goes up to, I think, $65 for the second offense and $85 for the third offense. After the third offense, it's a little tricky. I believe it's within like a 12-month period that we can actually ask the court to relinquish the animal. Hopefully it won't get to that point. One of the other big things that happened this month is that I was able to get an agreement with Canyon View Cares Veterinary Hospital here in town. But it'll be actually their Tremonton location, their Perry location, their Logan location, and their Malad location. So if I'm able to adopt animals to people who live in any of those areas, that they're giving us a discounted rate for the spay neuter, the rabies, and microchipping, which the spay neuter and rabies are required if we send an animal out of the shelter alive and it's not going back to its owner. We have to guarantee that within 30 days that animal is spayed or neutered and has rabies. So it helps us keep track of that and help people actually afford to make sure they're doing that. So we had our first experience utilizing that today, and it went great. So we, like the adoption fee on the one today was $140, but that covered the neuter, the rabies, and the microchip. So the adopter paid the city the $140. They've created a separate account for that money to be held in. And then I met them at the vet. They pick the animal up, and then the vet will bill the city, and it's paid out of that fund that's already sitting there. So it's not costing the city anything. It's not costing taxpayers anything. It's just the adopter's already paying it ahead of time. So then they're encouraged to actually get it done because they've already paid it. So anyway, we're trying.
All right. Let's, you have a question here?
Yeah. Thanks for managing it. I mean, a big thank you for what you're doing. I'm just curious, how does it work with Garland? Is this another,
They're paying me.
they pay?
They're paying me.
Wow.
That's-
What's that?
She's an employee of Garland City.
So that's why they're getting the services, because they're paying me. They gave me
Okay.
a patrol car and they're paying my wage to do this. So
That's really good
Yeah.
news.
There.
yeah, so Best Friends Animal Society has been a huge contributor, like to helping me even function. They've brought us multiple trips of donations from Salt Lake, but just in one delivery, they brought us, it was at least $3,000 worth of just the things I went through that I knew we couldn't afford: parvo tests, microchip scanners, oh my gosh, food and beds and feral cat cages and all the things just in one setting that they just brought us. And I'll be addressing the council to try to, I would like to partner with them so that we can utilize more of that, and it would help us qualify for grants and other resources through them if we actually partner with them. So Anyway.
Thank you, Julie.
That's great.
Appreciate that very much. Okay, council reports. Rick, do you have anything for us tonight?
Well, yeah, I did. At the water seminar, there was a cybersecurity guy there. I can't remember his name. Rick Gardner, I think. Anyway, it's all free with, and they'll come in and
Do an audit?
they'll go through your system.
Okay.
But he's like 6 months out.
Okay.
It was it was a good presentation.
Sounds good.
Well,
Thanks to Mark and Curtis. I guess you two are the ones. Sean probably is involved with that. I know there's a lot of work going on, but if we have to raise taxes, we appreciate the information so that we can make decent decisions. Thank you for what you're doing.
Done a great job.
he did. I know he worked on it for a long
Amen.
time. He was working on it for a long time.
Very much appreciated. I will say a couple things. I so appreciate living in Tremont and having our public works take such good care of us during these stormy days. We need the snow so much, and I've gotten up in the morning and they've already been to my street, and I see things differently now, and I'm grateful for those that take care of my street, and I just want to say that publicly. The other thing is, I appreciate Sarah's work, that I can get on Facebook and I can see what's going on in Tremont, and that's wonderful. That's not been the case, as much. So thank you, and Julie, thank you too. And there was one other, the library. This is something that I didn't know until just recently, but they have, if you wanted to take a group of children into your library and they wanted to have a science lab, you could go in there and they have this virtual frog dissecting thing that you do virtually, and it's the coolest thing. And so our youth can go in there and have all these experiences. And yes, it's virtual, but I thought it was fantastic to be able to have that in our library. Our library is just amazing. And I don't think we recognize all the good that goes on there. We don't say enough about it.
Chris, do you have anything?
Just, if anybody asks, the mayor's gonna put it out. There's sand over here. People's gonna get nervous about when the snow melts. The mayor's way ahead of it.
Well,
There's sandbags.
Well, the office here. We've had quite a few people calling in and saying, what are we going to do when all this snow starts to run? And I went today and back in 2017 when we had the flooding over there north of Butter's Tractor. I went over to that same street. I took a picture back in 2017 of there we go. Oh, yeah, there it is, right there. That's
Oh, yeah.
2017 on the
Oh,
left, and on the right is today. But look at those mountains. All that water's all that's got to go somewhere. And so there's been a lot of people asking what to do, and so it's going to hopefully get we're going to hopefully get this out on the internet today so that we can give them some pointers. But the reason I handed this out is do you have any other ideas, any other thoughts that you'd like to, you think maybe need to be added to that? Maybe you can take it home and then if you.
Well, when the moisture comes off of your roof and, you've got your gutters, you want to run your water away from your home, right? And you can buy those plastic, whatever they are, and they hook on the end so that it can take, I think that's important for people to realize that one simple thing could make a big
Get it away
difference.
from your gutters or your window wells and stuff. anyway, you can look it over, and if you have any ideas or any additions, we can add those to it. But we'll have Sarah put this out on social media. That's all I have. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for all your service and everything you do to make this city run. I know sometimes people don't see it quite that way, but I do. I think it's just incredible, everything that, this group of people here is able to do to make this city, make it run like it should. So with that,
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
okay, okay, we got a motion. And this motion by Connie, and second by Lyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.